Good evening. I would like to call to order the meeting of the Winchton Board of Selectmen on Monday, August 9th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience this evening who is audio or video recording? If you would please just make yourself known. And I see and hear none. Thank you. Moving on, Selectmen's comments. It's been a few weeks since we've met. It's good to see everyone. Mrs. Salter.
I'm all set, thank you.
Mr. Ward.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Mrs. Anderson.
Thank you. I would just like to remind everybody that they're still doing the concerts at GAR Park, and I think through the end of August they are scheduled. Is that right, Mr. Ward?
I think so.
I
yes.
believe so, because they were delayed due to rain and whatnot. So I look forward to each and every one of them, and I would like to encourage everybody to come on Friday nights.
Thank you. Mrs. Lapointe.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have to make a comment. We won't meet again. No, we will meet again. I'm thinking about school starting. It's only a few weeks away. It's hard to believe, but I think it's going to be a good year. Are there any public comments and announcements this evening? Anyone wish to bring something to the board? Thank you. Seeing and hearing none. It's not quite 6:35, which is when the public hearing is published for. So I'll entertain a motion to skip the public hearing and go back to it at 6:35.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So we'll just jump to the first one under 5, entertainment permit to reach his own design. Would you care to come up and speak?
Way to delegate, Michelle.
Just please state your name for the record. You have to talk right into the mic.
Donald Como.
Thank you. So, 30 years. It's interesting that she has you come up.
Yes.
And she's sitting back there. Don, you've put up with this for 30 years, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
Good for you. Good for her. And now, where is the celebration going to be held?
It's 172 Central Street.
Okay, right at the place of
Right
business?
at the flower shop. Yes.
Okay. All right, good. We have any questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward.
I only have one question. First of all, congratulations on 30 years. But I'm looking at your diagram that you attached.
Yep.
Yes. And just above Grove Street, on the right-hand side, it says blocked, but I can't make it out. What's blocked?
Blocked. We're just going to block the driveway. Oh, yeah, we're blocking the driveway off.
Over on the other
parking
side of
lot.
the street?
We're blocking the whole parking lot off
Like in the back of the building?
in the back of the building.
Okay. That's all.
Thank you. Anything further for this applicant from the board? Seeing and hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward.
I move the Board of Selectmen approve the entertainment permit as discussed this evening for September 25th, 2021, from 1 to 5 p.m. to each his own design, celebrating their 30th anniversary serving the community.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the application. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Good luck.
Great, thank you.
Congrats,
You're welcome.
guys.
Thank you. All right, we are at 6:35. We're going to move back to our public hearing.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Ward.
Town of Winchendon legal notice, community outreach meeting. Notice is hereby given that a community outreach meeting for a proposed marijuana establishment is scheduled for August 9th, 2021 at 6:35 PM in the second floor auditorium at 109 Front Street, Winchendon, Mass. 01475. The proposed marijuana cultivation and manufacturing facility is to be located on a parcel identified as Assessors Map 12, Parcel 23, Commercial Drive, Winchendon, Mass. 01475. Any person wishing to participate or provide comment is strongly encouraged to attend, where there will be an opportunity for the public to ask questions. Reasonable accommodations will be attempted upon written request to the Selectman's office prior to the meeting. By Winchendon Board of Selectmen, Audrey LeBrie, Chair, 978-297-0085. Publication date, July 26, 2021, Gardner News.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to open the hearing. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The public hearing is open. All right. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm attorney Blake Mensing, here representing Winchendon Grows LLC. And just a quick background, not that you necessarily care, but I'm a full-time cannabis attorney and former municipal attorney. So this is all I do, and I've helped obtain just over 5% of the licenses in the state. So certainly would be happy to answer any and all regulatory questions above and beyond what we are required to cover by state law. So I'm just going to tick a few boxes, and then there will be a period for questions, as many as you'd like. So the first item we must cover is the type of marijuana establishment proposed for, as Mr. Ward said, map 12, parcel 23 on Commercial Drive. It is a proposed tier 11 cultivation operation and co-located manufacturing. It will be new construction of approximately about 120,000 square feet of building, obviously subject to the various permit granting authorities, guardrails that they may decide to put on that proposal. So this will generate anywhere between 100 and 140 jobs that are varying sort of skill levels. Obviously, there's a hierarchy within it from the sort of lowest level trimmers, gardeners, if you will, to those who may be running extremely expensive extraction equipment that is frankly beyond my bailiwick to understand, but it is quite involved and sort of more like a lab environment than a farm. The next item we're required to cover has to do with how we'll maintain the location securely. So here, the Cannabis Control Commission's regulations at 935 CMR 500.110 go into excruciating granular detail about what the security system must entail. So first off, you have to have commercial grade locks. That's the bare minimum. And there's full camera coverage, 24/7, 365, essentially in every single room that isn't a restroom for obvious privacy reasons. The commission dictates what the resolution of those cameras must be. That's full 1080p. Each frame of that HD image must be freezable and have an irremovable date, time, location watermark on it, so you can figure out which part of the facility you're looking at. The other thing that I often do for clients is just have an open dialogue as a baseline with the police department to say, if you would like, there's a way to have essentially a live look into the facility, which usually only becomes relevant if there was an emergency response. So for instance, you'd be able to see what's waiting for you around a corner if there was some accident or, God forbid, someone tried to break in, though that would make them, frankly, a very foolish criminal because of how many cameras there are. So in addition to that, the State Cannabis Control Commission requires signage and sort of access to certain areas of the facility based on one's hierarchy within the entity. So for instance, the product vault, where you're sort of storing your finished product to be shipped to a business customer, is what's known as a limited access area. As that name implies, you're limited by the rights you have as whichever rung on the ladder you are. And that includes full camera coverage as well. And then related to security, and actually a little bit of a segue into the next topic, we have to demonstrate a plan to prevent diversion to minors. So the first line of defense is minors aren't allowed in this facility. Period, end of sentence. Even if you happen to have a police officer that was 20 years old, I'm sorry, but your badge does not trump state law. You would not be allowed in if you happen to have such a young police officer. So, similarly, that means no bring your kids to work day at a facility like this. It's adult use only. You may not enter, period, at all. So that's the first line. The second thing the state requires is a seed to sale tracking requirement, and that's both a digital mechanism as well as physical. So every product, every plant will have a unique alphanumeric code. The plants are literally tagged with a physical piece of information that's scannable through an RFID reader. And that number, that alphanumeric sequence, follows that plant from seed to sale. So if you grow it and turn it into basically just a bag of weed, that has a number and the state knows who grew it, who sold it, and that is helpful in preventing diversion to minors. What I've had for my clients' wholesale contracts is essentially a look-back provision that says if our product number, even if we're, this is a business-to-business only, no on-site consumption or sales directly to the public, if one of the retail partners isn't keeping a weather eye on what they're doing and your products start ending up in the hands of minors, the contract says we have the right to get out of that because of your inability to follow the regulations. I think that's the right thing to do, and certainly the commission encourages that type of one strike and you're out kind of policy for the obvious reasons that kids aren't allowed to have it. So yeah, the diversion to minors prevention starts with they're not allowed in the facility. Similarly, at the retail level, you can't walk into a retail store unless you're of age or it happens to be a medical facility. This proposal is for an adult use operation, so if it's sold to a company that holds both licenses, there's the potential that they could move it over to their medical side. That's pretty unlikely because medical is required to be vertically integrated, meaning grow, manufacture, and retail. So they have their infrastructure, and cynically, they like their money and don't want to make less by selling other people's products. The next required component of this community outreach meeting has to do with the community impacts. So there's a twofold way that we address that. So the principals here, Steve Cefalo and Fred Massa, who are here tonight, are looking for input from locals in terms of where charitable contributions or volunteer hours would do the most good. The intent isn't to come here and say, oh, we know what's best. We actually want to hear from people to see what might benefit. The one sort of caveat I'd put on that is essentially anything mentioning the word children or kids or youth, that's a non-starter because it's an adult use. So I actually broke my client's heart from Arizona. They sponsored their local Little League team. You can't do that in Massachusetts. It's not permissible. On the flip side, there's a state-required positive impact plan, capital letters there. What that plan is intended to do is to try to undo some of the wrongs of the failed drug war. What the Cannabis Control Commission did is they identified 29 areas, cities and towns in Massachusetts that had disproportionate enforcement against people of color. Essentially, the consumption rates between people of color and white people are almost identical, and people of color, according to the ACLU, face 3.7 times more sort of interactions with law enforcement, and then the sentences are harsher for the same behavior. So what the State Cannabis Control Commission has said is, look, if you want to make money in this industry, you have to try to pick up some of the tab, which honestly, it was the state doing the enforcement. But anyway, I don't have a problem with it because it is trying to help people. So on that front, there's a charitable organization called the New England Veterans Alliance. As the name implies, they help veterans. So they have educational events in multiple of those areas of disproportionate impact. And that would be the proposal to give a charitable contribution to that entity annually. And certainly I know Steve and Fred would be open to helping veterans here as well because that's important to them personally. And yeah, that entity does, as I said, educational events, very much focused on the people that the positive impact plans are intended to benefit. So that is the community impact component. And again, please, if anyone in the audience or watching at home or any of the board has any suggestions, we want it to be a dialogue to say, hey, how can we make something a little bit better by being here? That's another good segue. The last item we're required to cover by law has to do with a plan to prevent a nuisance. So the first thing I always like to say is just that any host community agreement, any local permit, any state license you have, not one of those things is a license to be a bad neighbor. It's not a license to come in and do whatever you want. And frankly, the blood, sweat, tears, effort, and money it takes to actually open one of these things, you're inherently sort of incentivized to be a good neighbor. because if you're a bad neighbor, you can have the rug pulled out from under you, and it's astronomically expensive to build a facility, basically of any size. So yeah, that's the first component. The chief sort of potential for nuisance for any cannabis operation, retail, the biggest one is traffic, for the obvious reason is that you need people to come to make the sales. For a business-to-business operation like this, really the sort of chief culprit of a potential nuisance would be relating to odor. And that is just a matter of applying the right technologies. So inherent to the product, the plant, is that it's from nature, right? So if things go bad, if there are things in that growing environment, in this warehouse that shouldn't be there, the plants will suffer. So you get a double benefit essentially by making the air circulation really, really controlled. So it's likely to be a big steel building and then rooms within rooms. So you'll have the building envelope as one buffer. You'll have an in-grow room air filtration system that uses activated charcoal carbon filters. Those have about a 3 to 4 month life cycle, and they just pump the air in and out. The other sort of, as I mentioned, goal is to just keep that as airtight as possible, because if smell is coming out, that means microbes, bugs, pests can get in. And I know colloquially it's called a weed, but it's not from Massachusetts. So you need a really specific, basically tropical climate in that grow room for this plant to thrive. So yeah, again, it's just inherently in a cultivator's best interest to keep that contained, because then they're also keeping bad stuff out. So yeah, that is literally the sum total of what the Cannabis Control Commission requires us to discuss. This is all I think about, all I've read about for the past 3 years, so I'd certainly be happy to answer any and all questions. If there's any sort of operational specific questions, we do have Fred and Steve here as well. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, and fire away if you have any questions.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mensing. Very, very thorough. I will open it up to questions from the board, questions or comments.
I think I would like to reserve mine, if I could, until after any public input, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Any questions?
I do.
Yeah, Mrs. Anderson.
I think I'm just really curious what kind of a timeline we're looking at with this facility.
Sure. So I'll speak from sort of my wheelhouse first. From the licensing and permitting side of things, we'll need 2 dominoes to have fallen to be eligible to apply to the state. One of them we're attempting to accomplish tonight, and that is a properly noticed public outreach meeting, community outreach meeting, and Tracy was kind enough to provide the form that certifies and attests that we noticed it the right way. So thank you for that. The other side of that has to do with the host community agreement, which is required by MGL Chapter 94, Section 3D. What that mandates is, in order to even be an applicant, you have to have a contract with the town that defines rights, duties, responsibilities, et cetera. I had a phone conversation on Friday with Attorney Nicole Costanzo of KP Law, and I think we're pretty close. I just have a couple items to revise slightly, and then obviously she'd give that back to the town. I imagine I'd pick up a conversation with town manager Salzbeck. So that's on the state side. So once we apply to the Cannabis Control Commission, it's kind of like any state bureaucracy. You twiddle your thumbs until they decide to get back to you. I can't predict when, but it's typically within, I'd say, 2 to 5 months that they have the first outreach. And the form of that outreach is what's known as a request for information. Exactly as the name implies there, they say, tell us more about this, or say this thing in particular, or don't say that other thing. So again, I've gotten many licenses in the state, and at this point, the commission has fewer questions to ask of me, just because I know what the rules say, and I write the plans to say how we'll follow the rules. On the local level, we're not going to sit on our hands while the state's, again, twiddling their thumbs or doing I don't know what. So the plan would be to do a full court press to get any and all local permits that will be required. And yeah, just to clarify, the host community agreement in and of itself has nothing to do with zoning. It's a state requirement in order to commence that process. On the local side, it would just be as if it was any other development, obviously with some unique questions that will come up because it's a slightly different use than everyone proposes. So yeah, I also used to be a municipal attorney, so I've actually written zoning bylaws, et cetera, so that's sort of also my wheelhouse. I probably overly thoroughly answered that question, but that's kind of who I am.
Anything else, Mrs. Anderson? Okay. I have a question. So provided to us, we have, information on you, and then we also have information on two other gentlemen, Stephen Cefalo and Frederick Massa.
Yes.
Are they the owners, or who is?
Yes.
Who is actually owners?
So Steve and Fred are
gentleman
here.
right there.
So yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
a brand new LLC formed for the explicit purpose of obtaining these licenses.
Okay.
So yeah, most applicants do that just because previously existing entities have other things, and you just want to sort of keep it in this cannabis lane. So yeah, we
Okay.
did provide their professional bios, and I'm sure they'd be happy to say hello, although they did pay me to do most of the talking, so that's...
Now, I'm looking at the diagram. The legal notice indicated the street address. For those of you who may not be familiar with the name of the road, the proposed site is the Hillview Business Park. As you go up the hill, we have the Milek property in the building on the right. This would be, if you go past the Milek property, it would be down kind of parallel to Route 12 as the Milek piece is. Will the buildings be visible from Route 12, or how's it going to look from the outside passing by?
So I will confess to being extremely geographically challenged. So I don't have a great mental map in my head. I believe the acreage is around about 15 acres. So yeah, I think obviously the first thing we have to do is comply with setbacks.
Right.
Given that it's a warehouse, the Cannabis Control Commission doesn't have any rules about someone being able to see the warehouse. But one thing I would say is just that because it's a business-to-business only operation, there's no benefit to having a sign or neon lights or anything. Frankly, we'd prefer just to be anonymous, and you know it's there if you are from the town or work there or have authority to enter it.
Right, and I would agree with that 100%. I just like, 12 is one of the main gateways into and out of town, so
Right.
whatever would be visible from the road, as long as it looks neat.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward,
just
I
a,
think
Oh, I'm sorry.
Fred's got some.
You got it,
so you have to speak into the microphone.
Need the microphone.
Oh, he says it will not be visible.
Thank you.
I just have, you said there's something like 140 personnel.
Yeah, between 100 and 140 jobs, yes.
So are they on different schedules, or are you talking about 140 people going in and leaving the same time every day?
Yeah, so it'd be licensed specific. So typically manufacturing happens in normal business hours. Again, because it's a plant, there are times when you might have to check on something overnight. It's not going to be a full 24-hour shift by any stretch. And really, part of the reason why these facilities are so expensive is you build sort of technological redundancies, so you don't have to rely on, John Q. employee to know every little detail, just because it's a plant and things can go wrong. So yeah, there'll be basically a hub that has sensors and gives you detailed readouts of the temperatures, the humidities, and automated feeding and fertigation scheduling. Again, that's sort of outside of my direct wheelhouse, but yes, it is more like a lab than it is a farm. So yeah, 24 hours is not likely, but there may be an instance where someone has to show up. Oh, that water filter is leaking, or whatever might happen. So yeah, it's not going to be regular overnights.
Yeah. My only concern is that's a difficult road. And when you come out of the gas station, out of Dunkin's down there, it's difficult because cars come back and forth. So those 150 folks coming in and out of work every day, the trucks going in and out, this is going to have to be a concern down the road, whether we need some sort of traffic light or something there, because it is going to be congested.
Yep. And if I may, a traffic light to address that type of issue is exactly what state law has envisioned under the community impact fee. That would clearly be reasonably related to the facility's operation, so it would be off the back of gross revenues of the facility to put in that stop sign if it was determined to be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
And then just one other thing, just with the local permitting as well, I'm certain they'd ask similar questions, and basically we'll demonstrate we meet the standard or not get the permit. So that's not what I intend to do.
Just to touch on that, I don't know if you've been around town much. We do not have in town, we have one, I take that back, we have one actual traffic light in town.
Okay.
So you wouldn't be the first, but that would be among the first. But, we all recognize that even without the potential of your business there, that's a tough intersection. I don't, personally, speaking just for myself, I don't think they designed it right when they did widen it. they should have made the, turning lanes and all this other stuff. So I think, obviously, that's something that I think we'll have to look at.
Absolutely.
As not just for your purpose, but to make it safer for everyone going through there, because it is a main travel way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as a municipal attorney, I got designated my firm's streets guy, so I unfortunately know a lot about the law underpinning every road. So yeah, if it's an issue that can be addressed and tie it to this facility's operation, I think they'd view that as a win. I guess I have no idea what a traffic light costs, but shouldn't be prohibitive compared to the potential revenue. So
Yeah.
yeah.
The safety would outweigh the
Absolutely.
cost and the aggravation of people who have to stop as they fly past Dunkin' Donuts. Mrs. Salter.
Yeah, my concern is just the traffic and not just a light, but having turning lanes out there, because what happens is, you get people going 50 miles an hour, and all of a sudden, someone decides they're going to stop to turn, and
Right.
that's when we have problems.
Yeah, absolutely. The standards in the zoning would dictate that all of this be addressed. I'd say about 70% of the projects I've been involved with end up with some sort of traffic study.
Yeah.
And certainly if you have that many jobs, there would be at least that many cars, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be something we'd look at, in discussion with the town and obviously with the permit granting authority.
Okay, that's my only concern.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Mensing from the board? Mrs. Lapointe?
Yeah, I guess I'll voice my concern now, and I'm doing this at the risk of sounding like an old fuddy-duddy and a prude. I'll just put it out there. I'm not one who's in favor of these facilities in town anyway, but I do understand that we're required by the state to allow them, so there's that. But I do have to say, I understand that there's controls in place for the odor. There is a facility near the end of my side street. I don't know which type of facility it is. It's the one that's owned by Higgins Mechanical. When I walk the dog, you can smell it. So I am concerned. There's hockey rinks right there where children do tournaments and play in weekly leagues. And I'm concerned on what kind of impact it might have to the businesses that are already there, because I don't think it can be completely controlled. And again, maybe that's just me. I can't stand the smell personally. I can smell it, before I can even see it when I'm walking the dog around the block. So I just want to put it out there. That's a concern for me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I personally love the smell, but yeah, that's
Nothing further from the board at this time? All right.
Could
Yes,
I just,
Mrs.
could I
Anderson.
just say, I smell it in my neighborhood, and I don't have a facility near me. Somebody somewhere is
Oh, I know.
yeah, it's
imbibing, so.
It's actually legal to consume cannabis in public anywhere if you're a medical patient, that cigarettes are allowed to be smoked, which I know is a dwindling number of places. But yeah, I think it's like anything as an adult. If you have someone who complains about something you're doing, you should be responsible and say, hey, let me try to adjust what I'm doing to not offend your olfactory senses. So
Sure.
Right.
And I do ride that bike path all the time.
Yep.
And I smell it on the bike path. And you're not there yet, so, just saying.
and again, yeah, it's a matter of choosing the right technology. So I'm certainly
Okay.
not an engineer, but no, I've been in huge facilities, and you don't smell a thing if it's done right until you're in the rooms. So yeah, it's just a matter of doing the right engineering and sort of adding redundancies. So if something does fail, you don't have a stink apocalypse.
Yeah. So just put a little red asterisk next to smell control, odor control. It would be great.
I know I'm nitpicky, sorry.
No, not at all. Is there anyone from the public, from the audience this evening who wishes to speak on this issue? For or against? Mr. Vine, please come up. You'll have to share there's another mic, okay.
Hi, Greg Vine, Morris Ave. Just one quick comment, and that I'm not here for or against, quite frankly, but and I have no problem with money from their profits going to the organization that the representative here mentioned, because it's pretty certain that the drug laws over the years have been enforced unequally between certain groups of our society. But that being the case, I would still suggest that when you do an HCA, that any money that goes to a good cause, that the select board ensure that they are Winchendon specific. And that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Vine.
Thank you.
Anything for anyone further from the audience?
Ju-
Yes, please. Record, state your name, please.
Hi, good evening. Rick Laperia, Milek. Please don't shoot the messenger, but I just want to relay from, here again, I'm not neither for or against, just want to relay from some of our employees and several of the mothers or parents of people who participate in the leagues up there, you know, their main concerns about, you know, being around young kids, even though it's, you know, there's all these rules. You know, the smell's a major concern. You know, some of our people used to belong to a gym in Fitchburg, and they gave up their membership, you know, because there's a place right there. The smell, and, you know, a lot of people are just concerned, you know, they don't want to bring their young kids there, and, you know, right or wrong, good or bad. And, you know, we've finally come through this COVID thing and started opening up, and anybody who was around last weekend, you know, we hosted the largest youth tournament in the country. We had 36 teams from all over. This past weekend, we had a camp for the Team USA U16 team yesterday, which is bringing in people from all over. And you know, about 6 weeks ago, we inked an agreement with USA Ball Hockey, which is the governing body of the sport in the United States, as the equipment supplier and sponsor, and they're the ones who are going to be funneling a lot of these training camps, whether it's for men or women or youth. Like I said, just please, you know, don't shoot the messenger. You know, neither for nor against, but just be considerate of the children. And, you know, a lot of the parents have asked me, you know, to come down and at least voice their concerns. And, you know, a lot of them asked, you know, originally, I don't know if it was this one or it was another one, was slated to go in by the Clark Memorial, down by the bowling alley or whatever. And, you know, it was determined it was too close to youth activities. You know, a lot of people feel this is kind of similar. But, you know, that's their concerns, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing those forward. They're duly noted. Ms. Murphy, maybe you can answer this. I remember the discussions, especially when we were talking about getting the zoning going. You know, can't be within X number of
Sure.
feet
Yep.
of. Does that apply to cultivating and manufacturing as well, or just
It does,
retail?
it does, and it's 500 feet.
Okay. And now, as far as the positioning of the buildings and the activities and the outside rinks and such like that, you're obviously aware of where the rinks are and such like that, so, okay.
Yeah, my understanding, and I have not looked at the bylaw in recent memory, but the state law requires a 500-foot buffer minimum from public or private K through 12 schools. What sometimes comes up is a prior regulation of the Department of Public Health that regulated medical. The Cannabis Control Commission absorbed that about a year and a half ago, but essentially copied and pasted the regulations, except for the construct that I'm about to describe, and that was a required buffer from a place where children commonly congregate. That does not exist anymore in the adult use context. I think what happened in practice is that's a pretty squishy term, and people were trying to use it to say, just because my child walks by that place, that they're congregating. But I think they really envision playgrounds, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, again, that will be something that will be discussed in the permitting process, and we'll have to abide by the town bylaw buffers. I just don't know off the top of my head if that includes.
It does. We specifically discussed Milek and the outdoor rinks, and that qualified as where children congregate. So that was a specific concern.
Great. So, yeah, we will meet the standard or not. But yes, that concern is certainly heard and appreciated.
Thank you. Anything else from the audience, from anyone here? All right, seeing and hearing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward,
motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The public hearing is closed.
Thank you for your
And
time,
now
Madam
we'll-
Chair and the board. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Anything further from the board? Seeing and hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward,
I move the board authorize the town manager to negotiate and enter into a community host agreement with Winchendon Grows LLC on behalf of the town of Winchendon.
Second.
motion has been made and seconded to authorize town manager to move forward with this. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Was that an aye, Mrs. LaPlante? Thank you. LaPointe, beg your pardon.
It's okay.
Okay. Good luck, gentlemen. Thank you. You're welcome. At this time, I know that we're a little after 7, which is the time for the joint meeting. I'd beg the indulgence of the Finance Committee and the School Committee. We have a few other entertainment permits this evening. If we could just take care of those, so those people who are here can depart without sitting through the tri-board meeting. I would like to move forward with just these last few here. So next up, entertainment permit for the Recreation Commission for a road use, bike path use permit, Tour de Winchendon. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Deborah Bradley with the Recreation Commission, and we have been meeting to get some new events going on in town. And one we thought we'd come up with is a tour to Winchendon to kind of highlight the bike trail, the Winchendon Community Park, and in between, and some of the local businesses to stop along the way for pit stops. And so we're looking for a permit for September 18th with a rain date of the 25th. The event should start at 10 o'clock. It is not a race, it's a family fun run. So depending on how long they take to go through the route and stop to take a snack will determine when they get back to the park, the community park, where they will be also having a picnic that same day. So it will kind of run into that.
Thank you. And I saw a note about Chief Walsh just being
Yes.
aware of it and perhaps providing
I talked
assistance
to-
as available for certain intersections or such.
Yes, I talked to Lieutenant Walski, and he said that he would provide crossing at the top of Maple outside of the park, down by CVS, and down through Summer on the way out. On the way back, it's all right turns, and so there won't be any needed.
Perfect. Yeah. Questions, comments from the board?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mr. Ward?
So I noticed the chief in his comments said he would provide police support if they were available at the time. Do you have a backup to provide
We do.
that support if he can't make it?
Yes, we do. We're going to have volunteers. We are reaching out to the schools as well to see, because I know the Honor Society needs to do some community service. So we're putting together a list of all the volunteers. They will have a flag to stand off to the side and like a vest or something to wear so that they're noticeable, just to help with the direction.
Yeah, because I feel I'm all supportive of the plan. The real danger here is families on bicycles leaving the park, and because they have to cross Maple Street,
Yes.
because they have to go with the traffic. And there are no crosswalks up there at all, and those cars come really fast. So there needs to be folks on both sides stopping traffic at least when they initially leave the park. Very
Yes.
dangerous up there.
Yes, we were thinking some cones as well and some signage leading up to it to help slow them down.
Yeah,
So-
but also having a person on each end.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Anything further from the board? Mrs. Anderson?
Madam Chair, I think it sounds like a lot of fun, and I love that you're kind of branching out a little bit and working with the community park. I think that it sounds like a fantastic way to spend the day with your family. I am a little bit concerned about road traffic, but
Yeah, we're going to have as many volunteers we can get. We're looking at the different organizations in town as well. Like I know we have some Girl Scouts as well as maybe even some older Boy Scouts that might be able to help us out. So we're trying to really pull it all together. It is kind of a rush now because of the timing and getting everything done, but I definitely think it's something we can accomplish.
I think it sounds fabulous, actually. I'm glad to see it.
Mrs. Lapointe?
I just think it's a fabulous idea. I'm very supportive of it. I feel like you've addressed all the issues and have a plan in place. It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it is also. My only thought would be, my suggestion, as was said earlier, at the beginning of the event, 10 a.m., that's when you hopefully, a lot of people, a lot of families are going to be crossing that first across Maple and then going down to the CVS.
Yes.
Do you have a plan on saying anyone who shows up later than 10:10 cannot do it?
Yes, we were thinking
Otherwise, you're
closer
gonna
to
have-
10:30.
Till 10:30, okay.
Yeah, and then we're not sure how many are actually going to sign up because it's the very first year as well. So we'll be considering it a success if we have 10 groups of families. We also are looking, and we have quotes out for some orange backpacks, string backpacks, because we were thinking orange would also help kind of show them off and put a logo on there. But we have, we still have to do the waiver when they sign up. We have to make sure that they follow the rules of the law, single file as well. And if they feel like their children are too small, they should not participate.
Yeah. Perhaps even a little handout with the bicycle law, rules and regs for public roads.
Yes,
Because
we
a lot
are
of
going to
people may not
have
know
a passport that we are working with HEAL as well, similar to their spring passport that they did, the
Yep, the
tour, Taste of Winchendon. We're
Yep.
going to do similar things with the same type of businesses and things, so they're helping coordinate that. And then we're going to have in that passport, it's like a flyer with the map, and then they get stamped along the way, so we can definitely add the safety checks all in there.
Great, yeah. Anything? Yes, Mrs.
Madam
Anderson?
Chair, can we use that lighted sign there to say there's a road race ahead? You know, the lighted
Oh,
sign?
the DPW?
Yeah, we only have one.
The
so we don't-
traveling lighted sign?
So typically, it's supposed to be for town-specific events. If this is something through the rec commission, then absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
Great.
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Anything further from the board? Seeing and hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward?
I move the Board of Selectmen approve the entertainment permit, road use, bike path use permit as discussed this evening for the Recreation Commission for the first annual Tour de Winchendon bike event to be held on September 18th, 2021, with a rain date established for Saturday, September 25th, 2021.
Second.
Thank you. Made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Best of luck. And I know you're not going too far, because you are here also
Yes.
for a scavenger hunt
Yes.
request. So tell us about that one, please.
So in conjunction with the Historical Society, we were looking to put on a scavenger hunt. It's going to be walkable through the center of town. There are a few outliers if folks have vehicles to get to Old Center. Kind of pinpoint the highlights in town. We try not to say too much of what they actually are right now, because in case anyone participates, we don't want them to know what these little points are. But at the end, they are going to be able to get a ice cream at Seppi's as well. So we're trying to have the fun, also try to promote what goes on in Winchendon and how to enjoy what we have.
Very good. Questions, comments from the board? Seeing and hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mr.
I
Ward?
move the Board of Selectmen approve the entertainment permit for the Recreation Commission for the scavenger hunt for Sunday, August 29, 2021, as presented this evening.
Second.
Thank you. Made and seconded to approve the request. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And the chair votes aye.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all your hard work.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward?
Yeah, I'd just like to bring up something. On Facebook, social media, we're seeing all these comments on who's playing this weekend, who's performing here. If you check, we have our own newspaper in town, so I'll give a plug to them, the Winchendon Courier. I mean, they come out every Friday morning, winchendoncourier.net's free, and if you go to their local events, they list everything that's happening in town. They list who's playing at Gar Park, they list who's up at the Bull Spit, so just check those out, and it'll save a lot of Facebook questions back and forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Okay, next we have a solicitor hawker peddler license applications from Stephen Westgate.
Oh, that's who that is, okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So you are looking to get a permit to go door to door regarding solar panels. Can you tell us a little bit about what you'll be looking to accomplish?
Yeah, so I'm part of an outreach program with Trinity Solar.
Sorry, marketing outreach?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would be going door to door, introducing myself and the company, kind of the no-cost program, just to homes that could potentially qualify for the no-cost program. So they would get a full solar system at no cost. We'd insure it, install it, and maintain it.
Okay. Now, would you be having that full discussion with them and doing the quote and everything? Or are you just like gathering information for someone to follow up with?
Oh yeah, so I'm like the first line of defense. So basically I go out, I find interest, find people that could potentially qualify. I just ask a couple pre-qualifying questions. I think there's 4 of them. And then just find a better time for them to meet with one of our solar professionals. And we can do that either virtually or in person, whatever the homeowner's comfortable with. And I do want to just state here, you know, it is kind of a crazy time for door-to-door sales. You know, we're in the midst of a pandemic. I do want to just emphasize that safety is our first priority out there. I'm fully vaccinated myself. I've been vaccinated since June. I always have my full mask on at all times. I just knock on the door, step 6 to 8 feet back, never go in the home, ever. I don't accept anything from homeowners. I don't give out like pamphlets or business cards or anything like that. And I sanitize. I have like a little mini sanitizer. I sanitize between every door. There's never any physical contact with the homeowner whatsoever.
Okay.
Just want to let you guys know.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Lapointe?
I realize that we have a bylaw written, however it's written, but I don't like the idea of extending to 8:30 or necessarily even 7. If we could reduce the hours, just because, I mean, there's so many families that have little kids and are getting, you know, dinners and getting ready for bed, and you just disrupt all that. And again, I know I sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but I would just like the hours to be reduced earlier if possible.
Yeah, and actually per our, what we've done in the past is we've said dusk or no later than 7 p.m. So would you be acceptable to that cutoff time?
Yeah, absolutely. We usually cut it back as, you know, with the seasons and everything. But yeah, I understand that. I don't like knocking until 8:30, just so everyone knows.
Yeah.
You're hungry and you knock on the door and you smell something good cooking for dinner, right?
Yeah.
Anything else from the board?
No, I think I'd just like to reiterate, I think it's scary when there's a knock at the door after dark.
Yeah.
And now going to the band concerts, it's dark at 8 o'clock when I'm walking home.
Right.
So I think 7 o'clock or earlier, depending on when the sun starts setting,
Dusk, yep.
because I'm old.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
I knew I liked you.
Madam Chair, can we hear from, I see the fire chief is here, and I see that the fire department has major issues with this. Could we hear from him? Could we hear exactly what he's thinking or what the issue is?
Good evening. On the permit application, basically as far as the department goes, our issues were specific to the pandemic as with the situation going on and as things have changed some. We also have heard different times, we get a lot, people call the fire station for a number of reasons. anything from soup to nuts. They call the fire station. And a lot of times we'll hear from elderly patients or hear from different things that the elderly just don't like people coming to their door a lot of times. They get very concerned with people approaching their door, their homes. We've kind of, we talk with them, and that's our job. We try to, tell them different things, explain what's going on. As a department, I know we had, and I think I put it on the comments, with an upcoming fall festival, we thought it'd be more appropriate to have a vendor booth or some sort to where the people can approach him, where it can be approached to the company for the sales. Obviously, that's just an idea. That was just something kind of with the upcoming here in town. But our concern mostly was with, during the times right now, with it difficult enough for the elderly that are home or homebound or not wanting to go places, that having a stranger, and again, no offense as far as that goes, approach their home with them having an unsure situation. It was just kind of something that we were a little bit concerned about.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Anything further from the board? All right, seeing and hearing nothing, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward?
And just to clarify, so
Yes,
we have the
please.
right times before I do the motion. So it'll be Tuesday through Thursday, 2 PM to 7 PM.
Or
It'll be-
dusk, yep.
Well, yes, but 7 at the latest.
Yep.
Friday, 1 PM to 7 PM. And Saturday, 11 AM, could be to 7 PM or dusk.
Yep, and actually, the permit says 5 PM ending on Saturday,
Just want to verify.
so that would be good, too.
Okay.
Okay.
I move the,
Chair? May I
Mrs.
just-
Daigle?
Thank you. May I just add that the gentleman is only here through September 30th, so the expiration date, if you are considering to allow this, would be September 30th, 2021.
Thank you. All right. Questions, comments, motions?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Ward?
I move the Board of Selectmen approve the solicitor hawker peddler license application for Stephen Westgate, representing Trinity Solar, as presented this evening, I guess with an expiration date of September 30th,
I'll second that.
2021.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve it. Would it be as presented or as amended? Because we've amended the times.
I'll do as amended, whatever.
Second.
Thank you, okay. Anything else from the board? Seeing and hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm a
Chair-
no.
Chair votes aye, and we have one no,
One
so
no.
it does pass 4-1. All right, good luck.
All right, thank you, guys.
And we have one last thing here, it's under package store license. Who's going to speak to that?
Madam Chair?
Anyone? Mrs. Daigle?
This is just to notify the board that the Snowbound Club, not the Snowbound Club, Noria Energy, Winchendon and Irving, it no longer wishes to hold their license, so they have surrendered their liquor license. And it's just a notice to the board. The ABCC will be notified as well, and it'll open up a packaged wine and malt license for the community as well.
Thank you. Now, and that will be our only open one, correct?
We have one other.
We currently have
This will
one.
be the second one.
Second one, okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll entertain a 3-minute recess while we set up for the tri-board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are recessed until 7:27. Thank you. I'd like to call back to order the Board of Selectmen at 7:29. Mr. King?
I'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting to order at the same time, 7:29.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes. At this time, I'd like to bring the Winchton School Committee to order. I don't have my fancy gavel tonight, so.
Madam Chair, could we?
Mr.
Could we
Kane.
begin the tri-board meeting with the pledge of the flag?
Absolutely. If you'd please join us in the pledge. And I'd also like to notate for the record, please, that Mr. Kent is recording for the Winchton and Courier, audio and visual. Thank you very much. Okay, welcome tri-board members. A few things before us this evening. First on our list is recognition of service. Mrs. Joan Landers. All eyes are on you, Joan.
I know, Ryan's protecting me. He's protecting me over here.
I would like to start with a memory that goes back a couple years, obviously. As everyone knows, or it's not secret, I work for the Winchton School Systems as a paraeducator. And I'll always remember, Joan, when you first addressed the staff at the first PD. We were all in the auditorium at the high school. And you came out wearing a brand new white pair of Keds sneakers. And you talked about how the beginning of school is like a time to start anew. And I believe you said as a child that was a rite of passage almost, new sneakers for school. And I've never looked at a pair the same way since. It always just brings your words back to my memory. It's been a pleasure working with you both on a professional and a personal level, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Vine.
I just want to, I mean, we probably have an awful lot that we could say to Joan, the number of good things that have happened since she came on board. And I to say thank you really isn't enough. And we appreciate the work so much that you've done for the district, for the children, for the parents, and for the community as a whole. And this is no reflection on you, Mr. King, but you're going to be missed, Joan. You've really helped set the tone for this district and given it the impetus it needed to move forward and made the changes that needed to be made. I can't say much more than that except thank you, and I'm glad that I've been able to serve on the school committee during your tenure.
Thank you, Greg. Ryan, did you want to jump in here?
The only thing I can add is regarding the commitment that Joan has made to this district in a time in her life where she could have made another choice. She could have decided to retire. She could have just
married.
She could get remarried. I'm taken. I
add some humor.
Good job. You nailed it. And during this last period where the school district has been challenged to find the right staff, to fill the right roles, to keep our district moving forward, Joan has certainly stepped up to assist the school district even after formally leaving the role of superintendent, and that deserves to be applauded beyond the great successes that Greg talked about that she has had as part of this district. So a big thank you and a big congratulations on the next step.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, and I'll add my own as well. I've already met with Joan. We did an exit interview, and we had a great discussion. We had a good meeting where we talked about the past and under Joan's tenure and how grateful we all were for the work that she has done, the leadership that she has shown and provided, and the joy that she has brought. I can't tell you how proud I was of the work that Joan led during the pandemic, especially when you see the superintendent delivering meals every day, driving up early here so that she could deliver meals, as well as keep her busy schedule. Her commitment to our students and families here was unparalleled, I think. And the amount of time and energy, we couldn't get her to go home. You drive by the school, and her car was still parked there, and it's like, go home. And she, no, I just got one more thing. I just got one more thing. There was always one more thing with Joan. And the benefit of her dedication, her commitment, were the students and families and staff here in town. And personally, she's been a big help to me and trying to help me grow as a school committee member, to try and get me to be the best version of a school committee member I could be, trying to get me to temper things.
You?
Yeah, me. Danielle used to do it, but when she left, Joan had to pick up the slack. So, but anyway, I do appreciate, Joan, everything that you've done. We wish you the very best. And, we were talking in our discussion, and she was still looking forward to getting her doctorate. I think it's amazing. She's ABD, all but dissertation. So I think, that's one of the things on her bucket list to get done, and I'm really jealous that she's able to do that. It's a great thing. So I know that she's going to do great things even, I don't like the word retirement. I just think it's too final, means there's nothing after, and I know for you there's going to be plenty after. You have grandchildren, you have your doctorate to look forward to, you have a lot of energy still, so I know that you're going to find some fun things to do, and congratulations, and really, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for all the work that you put in, your dedication, your commitment, your kindness, and you will be sorely missed, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair? I'd
Mr.
just
King.
like to, I think I could speak for the Finance Committee in terms of how grateful we were to be able to work with Joan, particularly on the financial questions, of which there were many over the last several years. We had a lot of opportunities to sit down together, talk about those issues, and I was always struck by the transparency that Joan presented. She didn't try to hide around the difficult questions, try to avoid them. She understood what the issues were, and certainly was right out in the open in terms of how she was going to address them. And I also say, as a fellow educator, I want to say how impressed I am at the way she prioritized the needs and addressed the needs in the school system. And I think that level of professionalism, that level of being an educator is something that is going to impact the school system for years to come. So, Joan, we wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you, Tom. appreciate what, okay, Ryan, you're in charge of the mic. Sorry. You were in charge of that. I couldn't have lasted here 1 week without the help of everyone. Everyone came out and offered their assistance from day one. And I'll be very grateful for that because it benefited the community, but also especially the children. It's funny about the white sneakers. I had read articles about Wichita and how the students felt that there was a time that people were looking down at Wichita. So I would tell the students that put on your shoes and show everyone we're starting new. So I really enjoyed my time here, and I thank everyone for everything they did for the students and for myself, and helping me through this difficult time. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Murphy.
I'd like Interim Superintendent, Mr. King, to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you. So I count myself among the few and very privileged to have worked directly for Joan under her guidance and her mentorship, and as well working side by side with Joan. And I would say that those opportunities are honestly the highlights of my career to this point, and what I've learned over the past 3 years with you. I'm very, very fortunate. You define dedication and compassion and how we should be looking to run school districts, and I hope to live up to the standard that you've set as we go forward. So thank you for everything you've done for me personally and for this district and community. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed, and thank you for helping me when I first became ill. I was saying to Greg, that's a true Southern gentleman. He helps me get through the days sometimes, so I really appreciate that, all that you did to keep the school district running. I really do appreciate that.
Congratulations, Mr. King, on your appointment. All right, next we have the Murdoch Fund Trustee Annual Gift Presentation. We always hear about the Murdoch Fund and what it does, but we have a gentleman here this evening who's going to give us a little bit of background. Oh, yeah, they just stole the mics. About the Murdoch Fund, Mr. Ledoux.
How are you? Thank you. I'm Jack Ledoux, and I'm representing the Murdoch Fund trustees. And every year we give a gift, or Mr. Murdoch gives a gift to the town. Just a brief history. Ephraim Murdoch Jr. died in 1882. He was a very successful businessman dealing in manufacturing and trade, and he was very loyal to his town, so he left his will and designated his entire estate to the town, primarily to educate kids 10 years of age and older. Don't know why he did that, but that was the only stipulation in his will, to build a building on land that was no more than 1 mile from his house. And the trustees built Old Murdoch and the land for $119,000. The school and land, were $119,000. The total school budget in 1890 was $6,000. So his gift provided not only the building, but also the entire budget for the school committee, the school department. And of course, as we grew, that process went away. From 1890 to 1920, that fund funded the entire school budget. In 1895, there were 65 kids in Murdoch. In 1948, junior-senior population was 438 kids. So the fund was more of an augment to the budget rather than the entire package. So at our last meeting, we decided instead of normally we designate a figure, our management people send the check to our clerk, which is Dick Ledoux is our clerk, and Dick gives it to the town treasury. That's been the process for years. At our last meeting, we thought, geez, it's getting kind of just so usual, practice as usual. People don't really appreciate
the gift, as they should, at least in our opinion. So we decided, I volunteered to come to this meeting and maybe be on TV and try to inform our townspeople that this is a pretty special thing. We have given millions of dollars to the town. Or Mr. Murdoch has, not us. We're just the messenger. And tonight we have a check for $175,000 for the school department. Last year I think it was about the same. We tried to always go up and never go down. We've been fairly successful in doing that. I think when I came on the board, the gift was around $60,000, and of course that was 30 years ago. So this man is special. Mr. Converse was special. He's the same, cut from the same thread. So I have a check to give the town, and I just hope it is appreciated by everybody, and especially people watching at home. Thank you for your time. I know you're busy.
Oh, you're welcome. Let's get a picture, please. Let's do it.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Go and get a picture.
Yeah.
Jack.
Yeah.
You want to come back around maybe and stand with the...
Get over there next to John.
Make you walk a little bit.
Get it.
Mr. King's going to join you guys.
Yeah. Mr. King's coming.
Yes.
Perfect.
That's perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Ledoux.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Yes, Mrs. Landers.
I spoke to Mr. Ledoux about this. I'm setting up a scholarship for a senior at Murdoch High School every year in Captain Murdoch's name, because he was really focused on education, as was his family. His father was actually a friend, a forest man. Doesn't get any better than that. So this way, the name carries on, and the community be reminded all he did for education. At one time, in 1961, Murdoch High School was the best equipped high school in the Commonwealth. So I just wanted to share that. So every year, I'll make sure that is awarded at the high school.
Nice.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thanks, Jack.
All right, thank you. Moving on. Next, we have Dr. Ward is going to present a report of the Montezut Vocational Technical School District. Dr.
Thank you,
Ward.
Madam Chair. Mrs. Daigle, did the school committee get a copy of the report? I know finance didn't.
No, I don't think so.
No, they didn't get it.
I believe I emailed them to Thad, Larry? No? My apologies then, I did not.
So if you do want one, perhaps Linda can email it so you have a list of the names. Since my last report, one of the big things that Monitech did was a cyber safety presentation. This was done virtually, which was kind of nice because it was about cyberbullying, regular bullying, how to keep your technology safe. That was in March. It was for students and staff, protecting your digital footprint, especially in this time when the last couple of years everything has been digital. There has been so many cities and schools and towns that have been breached, and this has helped a lot. Skills USA local winners, that's Winchendon winners. Amber Colcord for cabinet making. Austin Stewart for carpentry. Zachary Gothier for computer programming. Caitlin Scott for graphic communications. Kyle Johnson for graphic communications. Quinn Armstrong for information technology service. Tim Lemire for internet working. Nicholas Gahagan for mechatronics. Camille Haas for medical terminology. Alexis Thayers for nail care. Caitlin Scott for photography. And Damon Legault for urban search and rescue. The district winners From Winchendon, Arnoan Strom got a bronze in automotive refinishing. Caitlin Scott received a gold in photography, and Quinn Armstrong a silver in information technology science. We had 97 seniors and 31 juniors that were out in the cooperative education program in the spring, working and learning in area businesses. Monty Tech was also awarded a $45,000 rapid reemployment grant. This was due to COVID. They provided at no cost CNA training for 10 people in need of employment due to COVID layoffs. The program was a collaborative effort with North Central Career Center, 150-hour training program. The certifications included OSHA 10, basic life support for healthcare providers, CPR and AED, first aid, home health aid, and certified nurse assistant. On Friday, May 21st, the Monty Tech welding program was approved as a Massachusetts pre-apprenticeship program. Having this designation opens them up for grant opportunities as they consider every junior and senior in the pre-apprenticeship program. This was a first in the state. Admission to the Pontiac Regional Vocational Technical School is a selective process driven by the state-approved plan. For the last year and a half, 2 years, the state has been looking at how VOTEC schools accept students, what their entrance criteria is. Scholastic achievement, 25 points. Attendance, 20 points. Discipline and conduct, 20 points. The guidance counselor recommendation, that's from their home district, 15 points. And personal interviews, 20 points. There's wait lists, due dates, resident applications, and that's all at the Monty Tech website. It's www.montytech.net. I included in the handouts, which you didn't get, 603 CMR 4.0, which is the revised CVTE regulations. There's a 30-page admission document that you can find on Monty Tech, and it goes through every possible detail that you could possibly want to know. Last year, the graduation stat was 98.5%, 0.3% dropout, and 15% of the students have IEPs, 6% are ESL, which is totally in line with the state averages. This summer, Monty Tech hosted a June 14th to July 1st Boost Camp, they called it, which provided enrichment activities for any students who struggled in core academics. That's 22 students attended that. June 21st to the July 2nd was a Rising Freshman Academy, providing enrichment activities to the incoming freshmen and ELA math. 57 students enrolled in that. 90 students were in the first summer school, providing students with opportunity to recover lost credits in the core content areas. One of the things that Monty Tech noticed, I don't know if our local high school did, is that they had a higher rate of retentions per grade level. There was about 4 per each grade this year. So those that were just on the borderline, they invited them to the summer school. They managed to recover some credits, but there are still some students that are going to repeat the year just because of the virtual learning, the difficulty getting connected, all those things that come along with having to be responsible for your own learning at 9th and 10th grade. It was very difficult for a lot of our students. June 21st to 24th and June 28th to 1st were summer camp. This was middle school applicants had an opportunity to experience an introductory week of activities in specific vocational areas. They had 81 students in the first camp and 110 students in the second camp. I also gave a list of dates. You're not going to remember them. August 17th and 18th, freshman orientation. The first full day of classes is August 25th, but if Linda sends that, you will have a list if you want to attend any activities for this fall. The FY22 STEM Equipment and Professional Development Grant Award of $109,998. I guess they didn't want to do $110,000. Used to expand life science programming and a new microbiology course. The Skills Capital Grant of $250,000 will be used for equipment in the welding and metal fabrication program. And the Career Tech Initiative, round 3 of $165,000, provides training opportunities for adult learners at no cost in welding, HVAC, and oil burner technician trades. And Monty Tech is happy to welcome Keith Bourne, officer from the Fitchburg Police Department. He will be the student resource officer for the coming year. And again, you have the CTV regs, which will be in your email when it comes. And this is the culmination of the 2 years that the state trying to revise the entrance, the criteria. They not only say what each vocational tech school needs to do, but they also say what each sending school district needs to do. So there is no more of a disjointed connection. Everybody knows what their role is. And as I didn't print out this to give it to you. It's 30 pages back to front. So any questions you have, you're welcome to email them to me or Tom Brown, the principal at Monty Tech. Welcome to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. Any questions, comments?
I do have a
Mrs.
question.
Anderson.
And it seems to me I might have asked this question before, but I think now it has a little bit of a twist, if you will. I think what I'm interested in is, you know, even though the graduation rate is commendable, how many students are counseled back to their home district? Because having the academics on the every other week schedule probably isn't for them.
Monty Tech does not send any students. I asked that question when you asked me last time, so I had a meeting with the superintendent and the principal. They do not send any students back. They say they will work with them. They have teams that work with them. Students will often opt to go back because they don't want to put in the extra time. But they figured it was around 2.5% to 3%.
Okay. Thank you. And then I think as a follow-up to that question, is, you know, would those numbers have changed pre-COVID versus the COVID?
We don't know. I know. We had a meeting last Wednesday, and even the numbers for this year are really, you know, up in arm. We just don't know. Mr. Brown said that he had sent out, you know, they send out like 7-day notices. They call people, they email them, then they send a snail mail. Are you interested? You have until X date to confirm, or they go on to the next person on the list, because so many people just weren't around and you couldn't find them, and some of them moved out. So they're struggling too to find all those people that we used to have.
Sure. Well, I think the reason I'm asking is because I'm becoming more and more aware that there are dark spots, if you will, in Winchendon where people really just don't have access to the internet. And is that creating a problem, especially at Monty Tech, when you have so much work online?
Stuff. And they talked about that a little bit when they said about 4 students per grade level, that some of the struggles were finding connectivity. And I know they worked with some of the local libraries, especially in the larger centers, because they had hotspots and they could go into the parking lots and they set up tents and tables and stuff for them. And it was one of the things that I thought, if this continued, it's something that we could talk to with Manuel about here, because I'm sure he would be more than happy to do that. And the tents were so that even in a rain day, the kids could go sit outside, socially distance, and connect. But then it becomes a transportation. Is there a parent or a neighbor or somebody who can take them and pick them up?
Yeah. I'm wondering how many students maybe did we lose because of, you know, inconvenience. I don't want to go sit in a tent when it's 20 below out either.
That's right. I know some of the school districts in New Hampshire I thought was really creative, because they put kids on the big school buses, like maybe 10 kids on those huge buses, and drove them to hot spots, and they worked. The bus driver was paid for that day, then they drove them home. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Thank you. I was just interested in if they noticed a difference between.
Yeah. I think that if we shut down again, we're going to have to get creative on how to help these kids and reach them. Can't lose another year.
Thank you.
Anything else for Dr. Ward? Yes, Mr. Forsythe.
Through the chair, Dr. Ward, thank you. Phenomenal report, and I can't wait to see it. The only send it over. The only question I have is regarding the new state guidance on admission to your technical and vocational institutions. Some of the Massachusetts vocational technical institutions have preemptively adjusted their admission practices in anticipation of changes that have happened in the state. Do we know if Monty Tech made any changes for fall 2020?
Very, very few. They were actually in compliance. What they did is they took all of those guidelines, and now they're in the process of changing the policy so it reflects the state guideline. But the state also did something kind of different because they're requiring every vocational technical school to follow the guidelines, but all that schools have to do is submit those forms October 1st every year. Just submit. And unless there is a complaint or is there some, legal action, they say they're not going to be reviewing or looking into. As long as the form is submitted, it's like, check. So I think time will tell.
It's if I may, it's not a question that is agreed upon, but there are absolutely questions, probably in our town, but certainly in our state, about the appropriateness and especially the equity that comes along with the practices that are employed at your very popular vocational technical institutions regarding admission, and the service to students that will benefit most from that style of education. Your vocational technical institutions offer a college preparatory curriculum with a vocational education. It is the best of both worlds, some might say.
Yeah.
And if that is seen as only available to a certain student or a certain type of student, that's always going to draw questions. And so these admission guidance changes have been watched closely by many groups around the state, and the way in which our local vocational technical institution implements those will be very interesting to the school committee, the school district, and certainly to the residents of Winchendon.
Some of the questions that came up, even like in Monty Tech, when you have 18 very diverse districts you're drawing from, and the state saying you have to mirror your sending districts in like special ed population. Well, we'll have one district with 22% special ed population and another district with 6% special population. So who are you mirroring, or low economic students? Which district? Because you have very, Harvard, Air, and then, some of our other lower districts. So that, and you have a quota system. So it's not like you can say, I'm going to take 18% when you don't have 18% in one particular district, but you have a quota to fill. Some of the other voc schools don't have quotas. And so it's easier for them to mirror. But even when the state did this study, they actually came out and were surprised. They said when they looked at it, every vocational technical school was within 2% plus or minus of what they would have called the norm in the region for special ed, for diversity, for income, ESL. So they were surprised that it was as close as it was. And so they're tweaking those types of things to make sure that there is no recidivism and that anybody who is on a waiting list is not only of one population.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further for Dr. Ward?
Yep, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Great report. Well, thank you so much. There's a lot of information here. And I'm just thrilled that they're taking a look at the admissions, because I really have felt and have voiced for years that our, not just my tech, but our general vocational programs across the state have created an inequitable educational opportunity. And I'm glad that because when we look at the criteria, 20 points for discipline. When I was in 8th grade, I was an 8th grade boy with a lot of energy. I wouldn't have got I don't know which way the 20 points go, against you or for you, but I'm not sure I would have got the 20 points. And I have people I know in town here that are very successful for Monty Tech, and that's great. They had a great experience, great opportunities. They wouldn't get in today because of things like the 20 points for attendance and for discipline and things like that. We're making judgments on 7th and 8th graders, especially boys. I think the girls' research shows they're about 3 years ahead of the boys maturity-wise, so it's not as much an issue And certainly for people of color, for students of color, a lot of school programs in any school, whether it's regular schools or vocational schools or whatever, you'll find that the discipline rates are much higher for students of color, especially boys. So I'm glad that they're taking the step of looking into it and trying to create a more equitable process. I also don't know about an 8th grader getting an interview, like a college interview when they're 12 or 13. I would like to see them go even further and allow the sending schools to have some kind of input in sending students to Monty Tech programs.
Yes.
I still feel that, I know when I was a principal, I had kids in my school that it would be Azabet. Azabet would have been perfect for some of the kids I had at West Boylston. But they didn't get in because they were immature, they did something stupid, they were in a fight, or they did something that they lost their 20 points or whatever, and they didn't get in. And some kid who's probably going to go to WPI is going to Azabet when we have the programs right at West Boylston. They didn't need to go to Monty Tech. We had the programs for them right in our school. So they took a seat, in other words, is what I'm saying. They took a seat from a kid that really needed that program. So I'm happy to see that there's some movement. I'm also, what's resonating in my head is the fact that Murdoch was the best equipped school in whatever the date Jack LaDue said.
51.
1961.
When was it?
61.
60 years ago.
Yeah, 60 years ago it was the best equipped school. I don't think we can say that now. But I would say that Monty Tech is a pretty well-equipped school.
Yep.
And that's, again, another point about equity. And then the third point that I'll make, and then I'll shut up, because it sounds like I'm an anti-Monty Tech. I'm not. I have a plan where we could expand Monty Tech's opportunities for all students. I presented it to this, a group in Gardner, the mayor, and some superintendents there and whatnot. I presented it, and it just didn't have legs because they kept telling me because our vocational schools are under the state legislature, you have to change the law.
Right.
So that's where I think we need to focus, is focus on changing the law and make it more equitable. And really, Monty Tech does a great job. I know Sheila, the superintendent down there, she's a great lady, she does great things. But I think that we should find ways to have more opportunities for kids to go. And so I'm not anti-Monty Tech, but what I'm saying, the way the setup is now, which was set up 50, 60 years ago, it needs to be refreshed and looked at with different eyes in 2021.
I think that's what the state intended when they did this 2-year review, and they did have request input from local school boards. They asked people to be on the committees. And to your point about the equity piece, state came out and said it seemed that way, but in practicality it wasn't. So Monty Tech has a total of 701 males, 716 females, and 10 non-binary. So they're pretty even.
Yeah, I know that a lot of those figures do show that, but when we look at special ed figures, for example, there's no kid in a wheelchair down there. CAPS Collaborative wanted to work with them, with some of their special ed students, and have a partnership program with them because they didn't have facilities or space for some of the kids that they took in. They wouldn't take them because their disabilities were too severe. They have programs down there. I understand about safety and they want to be, make sure, but we know now that inclusion means all students, even with severe disabilities. And they're not taking kids with severe disabilities. they're taking kids with executive function and ADHD and things like that, which is fine, but they could be more accommodating with kids with more severe type special education issues. They're not.
I guess the
Yeah.
question, Mr. Murphy, would be what vocational or technical program would those students succeed at? Or are you thinking that maybe VOTEC schools should have a third function?
Well, I'll answer that by saying this. Stephen Hawking would have done fine down there.
I can't hear you.
Stephen Hawking would have done fine down there at
In
vocational
an academic setting, but what
Yeah.
would be his vocational technical program?
Well, I think he demonstrated
Like
that.
design would be-
I think he demonstrated that the research that he did and the project that he did would have been perfect for Monty Tech, even as a young person.
Okay.
So all I'm saying is, I just want to see the program because it's a public program, that we don't put up too many walls or obstacles and get in the way with kids who could really benefit from it, including the kids at the top of the class, including the kid that wants to go to WPI. But we have to find ways, number one, to find a way to equitably pay for it.
Yes.
That's something. And secondly, we need to find programs that will meet the needs of all the kids that join the collaborative.
And to Mr. Murphy's point, that should be a continuing discussion, which is when I was talking to Mr. Forsyth and kind of raised the question, if all vocational technicals have to do is hand in a report October 1st, where does it go from there? There should be somebody then doing a data dig, seeing what that means. And so that would be something to speak to your local politicians about and say, hey, we're not done here.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. That's a very good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. All right, anything further for Dr. Ward?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Saganowitz.
Just a couple of comments. Dr. Ward, thank you for your report. First and foremost, I actually want to agree with Mr. Murphy. I really honestly think, just by looking at the size of how many applications are submitted to Monty Tech, the size of the wait list, I think for quite a while now, there's so much demand that there's probably capacity and interest for another Monty Tech, right? It's clear that Monty Tech cannot be built out anymore. I think that vet clinic, I think, maxed out the building. I think it's pretty clear that we need more vocational education. The interest in vocational education is growing and growing and growing every year. I think the class sizes have increased slightly or maybe modestly over the years. But first and foremost, I think, and I agree, I've come around finally to this admissions policy. Not so much on the selection criteria, because I think it's pretty clear that we need to have some sort of standards. I think the standards could be lowered, but I think the argument is lost, especially when the state comes over and they say, this is fine. However, I think there needs to be a review of accepted students on the wait list, especially that quota, right? I think I can't remember the deadline, but it's August 1st maybe.
I think it's actually for the quota kids, I thought it was July 1st. If the district has met their quota,
right,
they're in, and then any other district is open to the students in districts, in our 18 catchment area, that are on the wait list.
Which I think is unfair. I think that needs to be addressed. You have communities that, for one reason or another, they end up on the wait list, and I don't know why, but there's examples. I've seen them. Especially after July 1st, the community's quota is, let's say, 5 students, and then you find enrollment after that July 1st deadline, where there's no students from that municipality. So the question is if these students are worthy enough, they've passed the admissions criteria, at least made the wait list, but they're still not enrolled?
Actually, that's changed. I can give you the latest.
Good.
Because it used to be, there were students like Harvard had a quota of 15 and didn't send any students.
Right, right.
They are upping now. That's why there isn't as many leftover slots for other districts, is because everyone's using them.
I think everyone would agree, especially if Winchton doesn't have that problem, right? We always fill out quota and more.
We have 21 is our quota for this year. We have 21 students.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
used to be, we had, 28, 29, 30, 40.
But we have like 50-something applicants, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, almost double our quota. So there's, clearly Winchton doesn't have that issue, but from a district-wide standpoint, I truly believe that if a student wants to go to Monty Tech, they're on the wait list, and for one reason or another, they don't end up being enrolled, I think that's unfortunate. I think there is significant value to vocational education. On that other topic, sorry, I got a couple more points. There was an interest, I think, actually, probably when I was interviewing for the rep seat, there was interest statewide from the then commissioner to start essentially satellite programs in sending districts. And it didn't really go anywhere for a couple of years, but I actually just saw that Gardner now has their own Chapter 74 program. And they're able to take advantage of that capital skills grant that Monty Tech gets, and it seems like they're getting every year.
Fitchburg has one too.
Yeah, and
So
I would encourage.
Some of the larger centers are, so that could be something that, Mr. King can do in his spare time.
I think we should look into it. I think, maybe taking a poll of maybe our middle school students or the existing high school students and seeing if there is a demonstrated need or interest in a particular subject. And I know that there was interest at the Monty Tech School Committee level to partner with those sending school districts to essentially start a hybrid satellite Chapter 74 program.
Even if it's not a local interest, but with school choice, if you had it available, it's also a revenue possibility for our district.
Right, right, because those then become Chapter 74 students,
That's
right?
right.
Finally, I know you're looking for a superintendent. Any update on the process, timeline-wise?
They hope to have a pool to interview by the end of this year, early January, and make a selection by February, March, so that they can work with Dr. Harity for the last 6 months.
Okay. One final question, actually.
I did not apply.
It's a shame. Back to the admissions policy. Has there been any interest from other committee members to engage in another conversation at the policy subcommittee level at all?
I don't understand your question.
Well, I think there's definitely been discussions or interest in discussions at the school committee level to at least engage in some sort of a working group at the policy subcommittee to review this. Has there been any recent activity on this, especially after the kind of the findings of this report?
Yeah, actually, they met last Thursday, and they're meeting again this week just on admissions, because they figured that's going to be huge.
Good.
And they've engaged an attorney that is apparently versed in this, so that they can put the language together.
Great. Thank you.
I almost hesitate to ask. Anything further for Dr.
One more.
Ward?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm not coming back here.
Thank you very much, Dr.
You
Ward.
did too good a job, Mo, that's what it was.
All right, next we have Toytown Elementary on bill repayment lighting upgrade. Is that you, Mr. Saltzback?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The Green Communities Program has recently announced they're administrated through the DOER. The traditional grant amount is $250,000 capped per community. They announced that if, over the course of the program, if a community has been awarded $750,000 or more, that cap's going to be reduced to $100,000. The Green Communities Program is an excellent program. It's significantly underfunded. So in response to that and in an effort to get ahead of that, where Winchendon has officially hit $750,000, we're looking for alternative sources of funding for these green initiatives. One of them, I've been working with Superintendent King to identify opportunities through National Grid, and I'm happy to report that we received a $17,000 energy incentive from National Grid for the purposes of updating all of the lighting at Toytown Elementary to LED. So what that will mean is effectively over the next 15 years, at no cost to the taxpayer, they'll have a completely upgraded LED lighting system at Toy Town, and they'll realize about $75,000 in energy savings. That's pretty significant. So we'll be going through the rest of the structures in our inventory in the schools and on the town side to try to identify more opportunities such as this, because combined, there's an opportunity for the town to carve a significant figure out of their annual operating budget when it comes to energy costs. It's also better for the environment too, so why not? Always a good thing. So we just wanted to report that to all committees and let them know that's an initiative that we're working on, and no action is needed at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Holzbach. Any questions for the town manager at this time?
So, Mr. Stolzbach,
Yes.
so
Dr. Ward.
Winchendon received exactly 750,000 or more?
We're just over that with this year's most recent award.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Town Manager. We have next the town accountant reports. Ms. Gogan.
Oh.
Thank you. I know everybody's anxious to hear how we're doing this year. I'm still working on reconciliations and year-end encumbrances. The auditors are in town hall this week, working on preliminary stuff, and I am working with, or I have been working with Joan on grant reconciliations. What I can tell you, on the town side for revenue, the accounts that are over budget, so this is the good thing. We're $25,000 over on sped Medicare. We're $26,000 over on meals tax. We're $79,000 over on building fees. We're $31,000 over on ambulance and $34,500 over on Chapter 70. The revenue accounts that are under budget, $38,000 on investment earnings, and that's because of low interest rates. Treasurer's miscellaneous, we're under budget by $20,000. As typically, we get rebates from Maya, our property liability insurance company, and we did not receive any this year. We had a big claim, or a couple big claims, one at the school department and one at the DPW. Veterans benefits are, the revenue is under by $36,000, and the veterans blind surviving spouse exemptions were down, we're under budget right now by $35,000. I'm hoping to get that before I close because I can book it into the fiscal '21, even though we receive it later in the year. Last year, we got it in September, so hopefully we'll get it before September 30th, and that will increase our revenue. So if we were to close our books today, our revenue is over budget by $3,000, pretty much right on target. As of today, the school department, if they don't do any reclasses, and I'm not sure if there will be, if there will be or not, if they were to close today, they would be turning back $200,000 to the town. And under budget for the expenses, transportation costs are under by $240,000. The FinCom Special Reserve has a balance of $75,500. Election expenses has a balance of $26,700. Veterans benefits has a balance of $92,000, but I believe that we will be having some encumbrances. Some of the veterans, they've been paid, but they have reimbursement requests, drug costs, ambulance, different medical that have not been encumbered yet. So there might be a little bit for the month of May and June to come out of there. Unemployment is a big one. We have $184,500 left, and that's because all of the unemployment that we thought we were going to need for the school department was covered under the CARES. So we didn't have to take it out of our budget. It came from the CARES money. Our health insurance is under budget by $62,000, and our property and liability insurance, we have a $25,430 left. So if everything was to stay the same as what I have here, our potential free cash would be $909,130. I inadvertently added the 200,000 twice. So the first number should be 706,130, which is the under budget expenses, the 200,000 from the school department, and then 3,000 from our over budget revenue. Our CARES Act, we've received $961,998. We've spent $730,483 through June 30th to leave a balance of $231,515. And I will get a complete expenditure schedule out to all of you within the next couple of weeks. I have to do another report to the feds. I believe it's due September 3rd, so I'll have to gather all the information from April to June, and I'll get it all out to you. We do have a request out to FEMA right now for $147,000. I anticipate that we're going to get the full 147, and I have a second request going out for $121,100. The way FEMA works, it's pretty slow, so I don't know when we're going to get it. The 147 is claims from last March until October, I believe. So it's been in their hands all this time, and they we go back and forth asking for documents, give them the documents, they ask for more documents or other questions. We've had to revise the schedule. So hopefully, I haven't heard from them, hopefully they're in the last stage and we should be getting that money soon. We've received $570,705 for the ARPA funds, which is only the municipal portion of the first tranche. So we're going to get 3.6 million, right around there. And they give it out in two different tranches. So this year we were supposed to get half of it. And the way it was told to me was the municipal side gets so much, and then the county gets so much. This is the municipal side. I'm not sure who or when we will get the county side, who decides that. I can't get a straight answer from anybody at this point, but I do know we will be getting it. So we will be getting our full 3.2 million at some point. And then my last thing is on the enterprise funds. You have a sheet that says enterprise funds crossover. The transfer station started out with the beginning, this is the retained earnings, so the 79,000 is a positive retained earnings, and they're ending fiscal '21 with a positive retained earnings of $128,779.11. The water started out with a positive retained earnings of $22,206, and we're ending up with a negative retained earnings of $81,563. The sewer started off with a negative retained earnings of $40,046, and we are ending the year of fiscal '21 with a negative $154,122. So the enterprise, water and sewer, are in tough shape.
Ridiculous.
Is that because we get that money by over?
Thank you, Joanne. Questions or comments? As I set my microphone here. For Joanne about her report.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Saganowitz.
I have one. It's good news on ARPA. I think DOR actually just sent an update within the past few hours that the county allocation,
Yeah.
the first tranche will be sent, I think, starting on the 16th, and usually takes a couple of business days. So it's possible, hopefully, that we receive maybe half of that, roughly $2 million from the county allocations, which is good news.
Yeah.
So whatever the Board of Selectmen, I guess, decides to do with it.
Thank you. Dr. Ward?
The only question I had, Ms. Gogan, is that this is the last year for our current auditors. Has an RFP been drafted or sent out or thought about?
I don't know the answer to that.
So, and just for clarification, was this previously a 3-year contract with?
It was a 3 with a possible 2-year
One-year
extension, and I
extensions.
believe they got 1 year, and we said at the end of that year, which is this coming year, that we would be sending out an RFP to check on what's available.
We can certainly put it together. It's good to know that we have 1 additional year in our pocket, because in addition, we're actually up for water services as well. So
So, yeah, it would be June 30th, 22 would be their end year, so, you know, that's something that can be on the audit committee's radar.
certainly something we can look into. Thank you.
Anything further on the accountant report? Thank you. Seeing and hearing none. I believe that is the end of the joint meeting. Mr. Kane,
Member comments?
are you going to adjourn?
I think we're going to adjourn. I just want to see if there are any member comments before we adjourn. All right, hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Yeah. Keith?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
8:31.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
And Winchester School Committee, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. If there's no
So
other
moved.
comments.
No, that's okay. There was something I wanted to go over tonight, but the Finance Committee is already adjourned, so
You couldn't take minutes while you were talking?
I just don't know whether I should go forward with this or not, but,
Go ahead.
all right.
Okay, but be aware that they have already adjourned.
Well, okay, that's fine. They
I-
can
you know,
stay if they want to or not. I just thought it was important, even though it wasn't on the agenda tonight, to bring up what I think is an important topic that's going to need to be addressed in the very near future by either Board of Health or Town Manager or Selectmen. And in case anybody missed it, we're in the midst of another surge in the pandemic because of the Delta virus, or the Delta form of the COVID. And Winchendon is doing terribly when it's coming to vaccinations. The last report that the state put out last week of the 5th was that for ages 12 to 15, only 30% of the population in Winchendon has been vaccinated. For kids 16 to 19, it's 39%, 28 to 29, 38, and 30 to 49, only 46%. Now, the state average is 70% of the population having been vaccinated. In Winchendon, our overall average, including the the older population, we're at 50%, so we're 20% behind the state. And I think that, again, whether it's the selectmen or the town manager or Board of Health, Mr. Kent may be able to help this at some point, we're going to need to consider, or should be considering already, the possibility of instituting a mask mandate for public buildings. On issues like this, it often seems as though Winchendon is behind the curve instead of ahead of it. And a number of communities have already instituted these mandates. Just for public buildings, that you don't have to wear the masks outdoors or for gatherings outdoors. But the Delta is a more virulent strain than anything they've seen yet. And I don't mean to be Chicken Little, the sky's not falling, but I think we need to act quickly in this town to do something to prevent the spread. And I don't know what the Board of Selectmen can do, or the school committee, or Board of Health, quite frankly, but I think we really need to put an effort into encouraging parents to get their kids vaccinated, as well as getting vaccinated themselves. It's just too important. I was talking to Jim Hebert, the health agent, today, and the state figures last week had Winchendon at 16 positive cases. When I talked to Jim today, that had already gone up to 25 active cases right now in Winchendon. And it's going up fast. In June, for a couple of weeks, there were none. And I think we need to start listening and taking our advice from Drs. Walensky and Fauci, and not from Facebook and Ron DeSantis or Greg Abbott. I think this is something that is serious, and I don't have the answer as to how we address it, but I think it's a topic that needs to come up with the selectmen very soon. And I know the school committee, we're meeting next week, and we're certainly going to be looking at masks, whether we institute a mandate for the kids or not, but it's a topic that's going to need to be discussed. So I just wanted to put that out there and put it on everybody's agenda and everybody's mind, because it's a serious issue. And right now, Winchendon is not doing too well with its response to the problem. Thank you.
Madam
Mr.
Chair?
Vine. Yes, Mrs. Lapointe.
If I may just support Mr. Vine, I'm going to put it out there. It's not that it's coming. It's already here, whether it's Delta or whether it's the other strains we've already been dealing with. As a parent, as residents, we're going to see just an influx.
Mrs. Lapointe, can you talk into the mic?
I can, sorry. We're going to see an influx of headaches and problems and financial difficulties because, I'll use my family as an example. There was a positive child in the infant room at daycare, so daycare is shut down. That doesn't affect just one family, that affects at least 10, 12 families, and this isn't going to be the only case. It's something we're going to have to deal with. It's going to have severe financial impacts on our town when people can't go to work again because they have to be home with their children, because there is no daycare available, because there are positive cases showing up in children. So it's definitely something that needs to be addressed and quickly.
Thank you, Mrs. Lapointe. Perhaps, Mr. Saltzback, you could start conversations with Health Agent Mr. Hebert on his thoughts, and draw from whomever you may need to, and report back to the board about the steps that we need to start considering.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I already have started having those conversations for several weeks now. Over the weekend, actually, I spent a half hour on the phone with the chair of the Board of Health, and then this morning I was speaking with Jim, just trying to see what the advice we saw coming down the road from the Commonwealth. And I do have reference in my town manager's report some of the COVID numbers that we're experiencing in the community, that as of last Thursday we saw a 3.73% positivity rate, which was a significant increase. In mid-July it was at 0.35. So it's a little bit more than a trend. It's pretty clear what direction things are going in. Now, that said, on average, vaccination rates in town rest around 45%. For the Commonwealth, that figure 65%. So we're 20% behind. We are failing very much in that regard. So I understand for some people it's a personal decision. Personally, I believe that the science is very much there and it speaks for itself. And I believe, in some capacity, I don't want to speak for the Board of Health, but I did have an opportunity to pop into their meeting prior to this meeting, and I think that message was mirrored as well. So personally, I am looking at some options that are within my purview in terms of re-implementing masks in public buildings. That would be town hall, police, fire, the library. The schools are outside of my realm, and I will certainly leave that to the folks across the table, but it is a conversation that we're already having, we'll continue to have as a group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Dr. Ward.
Town Manager, the vaccine administration that we have received at 46% is June 10th, 21, 2 months ago. Do we have anything updated?
I don't have an updated figure on that. Mr. Keith?
Mr. Town Manager, I was going to say that I'll let Keith go. The figures that I saw today from August 5th said we're at 50%, but
Okay.
Keith may have different.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Yep, please do.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Keith Kent, Board of Health. Mr. Vine's figures were actually quite generous. To your credit, I wish our numbers were 50%. We came up with 45. When we logged on by county, scrolled down to the town of Wenchington, it listed us at 10,765 residents. Apparently, they have that number before our town clerks do. Of that, it said 4,825. It was roughly around line number 190 or 191 going by county on their database. It said 4,825 was vaccinated, so roughly 0.448 or 45%. Obviously, there's a little confusion. I'm not saying Mr. Vine's right or I'm wrong. There's a little confusion depending on what site you go to out there. We are consistently 20% below the vaccination rates. And I would like to state right now, I'm speaking as a member of the Board of Health, not a reporter, so I'm not covering this. I'm not violating any ethics. This is my Board of Health hat, not a reporter hat. Right now, we are in a very tough situation, as we discussed with the Board of Health tonight before our reorganization. 4 weeks ago, we were 0.35%. In 1 week, that went up fivefold to 1.73%. The week after that, it doubled to exactly 3.68%. This week, we entered at last Thursday's most recent data at 3.73%. Kind of a lateral, but still positive of 0.05, a lateral. That being said, the board will and pleasure discussing it at the meeting this evening. We had some very thoughtful, well thought out discussion. I made sure every member of the board knew their opinions were absolutely welcome all the way, as they should be as elected members of the board representing our town. The will and pleasure of my fellow four members of the board this evening was not to vote to introduce any kind of a mask mandate in Wenchington, but to watch it week by week. And believe me, they were quite adamant about their explanations, each individually why. Under the former color-coded risk assessment map, which is no longer in effect for roughly, the last 2 months, give or take, anything in that 3 range, we were in the yellow zone. We entered red formally at 5.00 or above based on population in our county. The state risk assessment map right now, as of last Thursday, has the highest risk counties as the general area of the entire western border of Massachusetts, from North Adams all the way down to Monument High School Mountain area, and obviously the tip of the Cape in Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard. We are on high risk, not the full risk. I'm sure it's not behind the way it's going, to be honest with you. And I think for anybody to say that Mr. Vine or anybody else is being an alarmist, I think would be unjust at this point, because I honestly believe in my heart and the numbers were headed in that direction. The problem is, where do we go from here? What is reacting too much? What is reacting too little? We're never going to make everybody happy. We all know this. It's a very tough situation. Our demographics, our age groups, we're behind everywhere. This being said, it was the will and pleasure of the Board of Health's discussion this evening to go forward, watching it week by week, acknowledging that every single town department head, senior center, police, fire, DPW, public schools under the school committee and others, library, town hall, every single department head should keep the town manager advised of their concerns, as he is our chief financial executive officer of our municipality and our highest ranking official. The board wants every department head to be able to have good communication with the town manager. Previously, under former town manager Keith Hickey, as we know, there was nobody allowed in the town hall for a long time. Our board doesn't want to see it go back to that again. But if the current town manager had decided that it was in the best interest of the municipality to have masks in public buildings, the board said tonight they would back the town manager on it. They feel that at this time, the school committee should be, at this time, still the chief executive officer in sense of whether or not masks are mandated in schools. Governor Baker, with all due defense, and I had this conversation with interim superintendent Thad King, Governor Baker has essentially dumped it in the school's laps, saying every municipality needs to make their own decision. Rather than just give everybody a level playing field, he left it up to the municipalities. Quite honestly, really not doing school committees a favor, in my opinion, as chair of the Board of Health. I think he puts them in a very tough position. We now know by CDC data just released late last week that the Delta variant of COVID is now as contagious amongst unvaccinated individuals as the chickenpox. Congratulations, it's elevated to that level. If you are unvaccinated as chair of the Board of Health and not speaking for the Board of Health, I make a plea at this time, please highly consider getting vaccinated for the good of yourself and your family. Many people have said they are waiting for it to be federally approved, as it is still listed in the emergency order acceptance stage. I can tell you I had the Johnson & Johnson one and done shot, and I had 0 side effects. I didn't get a sniffle, sore throat, nothing. I guess maybe I was one of the lucky ones. But I felt as chair of the Board of Health, I needed to lead by example and get vaccinated, also for the good of my family. That being said, there is a large contingent of people, especially in Winchington, with our demographics that feel my body, my choice, and I must respect that. It is an individual choice, but I'm asking people to make the choice to not only help themselves, but help their families and help their town. There's no mandate, but I'm making a plea. Please help. Please do your part.
Point of
Please.
order, Madam Chair. We're in adjournment, so we need technically to leave the table.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
So with that, we had a very interesting meeting with the Board of Health. They want to leave it in the department heads. At this time, all 4 of my fellow members stated, along with leaving the school department and school committee, right now resuming where the school feels they need to go regarding masking with students. But it is, again, listed as contagious as chickenpox with the Delta variant if you are unvaccinated. And those are, shall we say, some very powerful statements by the US CDC. There's a lot of misinformation, Madam Chair, on social media, and I really wish people would stop getting their medical information from Facebook, with all due respect. Nobody on Facebook is virtually a doctor, and it's time for people to start asking their doctors and not armchair Facebook doctors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Okay, point taken. Obviously, like more discussion, Mr. King.
If I might just provide an update so that the board knows kind of where we're at with schools in terms of the DESE current guidance. The guidance came out about a week ago now for schools. And as Mr. Kent sort of alluded to, it didn't give a lot of guidance. We are strongly recommended to wear masks for students in grades pre-K through 12 and any adults who are unvaccinated, but it's simply strongly recommended. The only places masks are currently required by the Department of Education, the Massachusetts Department of Education, is in health offices, so the nurse's office, and on school buses, which sort of fall into that federal transportation guideline. So that's where we stand today in terms of guidance from the state. I do have a meeting as well with Mr. Hebert in the morning and the contact tracing nurses, the regional contact tracing nurses, to speak about what quarantining might look like as we move forward so that we can all be on the same page. Again, we're waiting on guidance from the Department of Education for that as well, but we're trying to get a little bit ahead of what that might look like so we can all be on the same page as we kind of look to get back to school. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that update.
That's one. My apologies for setting us off into another long discussion, but I felt it was important that we talk about it.
Thank you. All right. Are
Okay.
you- Go ahead,
So-
Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Greg. I think that was timely and worth the extra, whatever it was, 20 minutes for
Thank
us
you.
to talk. So thank you.
That being said, I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor and a second, and hearing no discussion, take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The chair votes aye, and we are adjourned at 8:48.
8:48. All right.
Madam Chair,
What's that?
We're not adjourned.
Oh, I know, I just, one second. Good night to my
You gonna make a
daughter.
recess?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Could I make a motion to recess for 5 minutes?
I have a motion for a 5-minute recess. Do I have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are 5-minute recess. Thank you. 4, 3, 1/2.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to call the meeting back to order at 8:55. All right. New business, wastewater financial review, the Ash West Joint Water Review Authority update. Mr. Saltzback.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And some of this was covered by our town accountant, so I'll be brief. And this is in part at the request of Selectman Anderson that whenever we have these joint water authority meetings, we just provide a quick update. So included in your packet, you'll find the minutes provided by Viola that run through some of the items they've been working on in this quarter, various training and education tasks, reporting requirements through Mass DEP. Just some highlights given the late hour. The lake levels on the second page, interestingly, at this time of the year, would traditionally be at negative 15 inches in 2016 and negative 8 inches in 2020. This year are at plus 1.4. So we have a lot of water, which makes sense given all the rain. Also worth pointing out on the other page, just taking a look at under discussion topics, that the contract is set to expire for October 22. There is an opportunity for a 1-year extension, which kind of goes hand in hand with what I was referencing regarding the services we have for our auditors. So with the 1 year in hand, I am working pretty closely with our DPW director, Brian Croto, to take apart our existing water and sewer system and put it back together in a way that financially works for the people of Winchendon. Unfortunately, there is a backlog of capital expenses that we're looking to address. There was a complete review of the existing plant operations, but there wasn't a review of the pipes that we have in the ground running throughout town. So, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the ARPA conversation, so a lot of these are connected, and that's why you're seeing that coming up next on the agenda. So I think at this point in time, where realistically we can't do an effective rate study because we don't know what would go into that rate, we need to cover our expenses. We're learning what our expenses are. It would be my recommendation to extend that for a year while we have an opportunity to do the studies and gather the data we need. So just something to at least put out for conversation, but I wanted to make the board aware of it, and I wanted to make this set of minutes from Veolia available to the public just for the sake of transparency. So before I go into the ARPA piece of this conversation, are there any questions about any of that?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Anderson.
a while back, one of our residents, Ed Ford, suggested we create a water and sewer committee made up of stakeholders in town. And I thought that was a fabulous idea then. I still think it's a fabulous idea. Because I don't feel, I cannot express how concerned I am about these accounts. And hearing it from the accountant that we're even in worse shape than we thought we were. And we need a group of people who are just focused on these accounts, these enterprise accounts, to try to figure out what is going wrong. Something is terribly wrong, that we are plummeting. These accounts have plummeted and continue to do so. And I would like to create those committees as soon as possible.
Yeah, I do remember the discussion, absolutely. Did we formally request, what's the steps to create a new committee? Do we have to do anything specific, or just the board instructs the town manager that this is something we want?
I can look into the logistics of that and put it on for the next agenda, if the committee would like, just to make sure that we're kind of covering all our bases in that regard. And to be honest, I do see the value in that. My only concern in terms of day-to-day running operations, I would definitely enjoy having input from the citizens, but in terms of trying to fix a multi-million-dollar capital issue, it's hard to find people with that specific expertise that would bring some serious value to the conversation.
In all honesty and in all due respect, we don't have that expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you come to us for that kind of information and advice. So I don't see why the residents couldn't do as good, if not better, if this is their sole focus.
Definitely understood, and that is actually the reason why we're identifying funding to hire people that do have the expertise to do independent studies, independent of Veolia, who specialize in this line of work, who specialize in water operating systems, who specialize in repairing capital issues that haven't been addressed in 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years on some of these pipes. It's all been guesswork. I just got here 3 months ago. I'm not trying to pass the buck. I'm trying to grab the bull by the horns and drag it to the ground for you. Respectfully. So, this wasn't a can I kicked down the road, and I could have. It's not what's happening right now. I'm looking to put as much light on this as possible and to get you all the facts that you need to make, an informed decision for the sake of the town.
No, I understand that, but I really feel that a group of people, just looking at that, we look at so many things, and that by 9:20 at night, we're tired. We're not giving it the focus that we need to. And if we had a group, a subcommittee, that could come back and report to us that this is what they've gone over. They'll go over it with you. They'll understand it. And they would help us. And I believe, that second set of eyes, whether they be experienced or not, they'll learn like anybody else. And I think they'll do great.
Are you thinking like in an advisory capacity?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they would just informate, the final
Report back
decision
to the
rests
board.
here, but advisory, yeah. If you could check into what it would take make sure that we do it correctly,
Absolutely.
a citizen group. Thank you, Mr. Salzback.
Welcome.
Okay, anything further on?
I have one question.
Yes, Mrs. Salter.
I'm looking at the negative number here. Are there any regulations, like in Mass, that say that an enterprise fund can only run negative for so long? Like, how long do we go with a negative? How much do we keep adding to that negative? I'm wondering if there's a guideline.
Sure, and that's definitely a great question. And the second piece of this, and it's something else that's going to come up in the town manager's report as well, that's certainly not helping the situation, is these numbers, they're not super reflective of the current situation we're looking at. Part of it is due to the fact that we're coming off a COVID year, to the fact that we weren't doing water shutoffs. So yes, we're currently about $180,000 in the hole between those two accounts, give or take how the numbers settle over the next few weeks. But we have about $180,000 in outstanding bills that haven't been collected either. Okay. And so the number that you're seeing there, it's shocking. I'm not trying to brush it under the rug, but there's a little bit more to that number. And now that the emergency order from the governor has been lifted as of June, we are going to start noticing individuals and continue with water shutoffs to try to recoup some of those funds and defray some of that outstanding balance that we have there. And I think another component, and once again, I wasn't in the room when the decision was made, and I can only lean on that for so long, but the last conversation that I saw, what I gleaned in terms of raising water rates is even the last time the rates went up, which was a significant jump, it came across to me that it was known that it wouldn't entirely kind of cover or solve the issue. And so, I guess what I'm saying is no one should be surprised by this, and the data is kind of out there. We're actively working to address it, and it's a culmination of issues. Another one is, given the rain that we saw this year, there's an increase in water in people's basements. There are illegally hooked up sumps that are dumping, and we're treating through our sewer system perfectly clean water that's getting pumped through their sumps. So to address that, we're doing an I&I study, or an infiltration and inflow, to look at illegal sources of things like storm water, not only from people's basement, going into the sewer system that we are paying to treat, that we needlessly shouldn't be paying to treat. Other issues, given the heavy rains this summer, fewer people are watering their lawns. So we depend heavily on usage. If that water is not getting used, people aren't going to pay for it. That's another component. Significant leaks throughout the building. Mass DEP recommends about 12%, give or take. It would be considered normal for a system in terms of unaccounted for water loss. We're looking at about 25%. That is significant. And so these are things that we know, these are things that are known. In the past 3 months, Mr. Croto and I have been working around the clock to find ways to collectively take these 5 or 6 issues, and if we can chip away at them to try to make a dent in this overall number, I think that's the important piece, and that's what we're working on. But the takeaway from my end is that these are things that weren't being worked on for the longest time. Brian is also relatively new in his role, and he is just as eager to fix some of these problems. And the way we're doing that, you know, even looking at the ARPA sheet, we have listed on here proposed an expense of $176,000. Brian and I worked with Ty and Bond to establish an RFP, a scope of work, so that we could put out and have professionals study the water line from Ashburnham. It has an expected $6 million price tag. With all this ARPA money coming down from the state, this is one of the situations when I reference saying you want to have a shovel-ready project with the plans in hand. This is an excellent use of ARPA funding, because we can go out, use that $176. It's not coming, you know, off the Winchendon taxpayers' back. It's coming through ARPA funding, which, don't get me wrong, is funded through a different way. It all comes from the taxpayers, but it's not coming out of our general operating budget. We're paying that money to have that study done so that we have all along Sherbet Road from Ashburnham coming into Winchendon, our main line that is known to leak significantly, a $6 million project. Now we have an opportunity to try to get grant funds to pick up some or a majority of that cost. So we're actively working on implementing these things. Unfortunately, they're things that you can't do overnight. They're things that are very expensive. They're things that are unbudgeted that we're, you know, kind of kicking and screaming to find creative ways to pay for them, but we're trying to put the town in a good position to address these issues. And it's not all the rates. It's not. That's a piece of it. A significant piece is this is a really aging piece of infrastructure that really needs to be addressed and hasn't really been given any attention for too long. And we're giving it attention now.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
Yes, Mrs. Lapointe.
If I may, I fully understand the need to pursue our accounts receivable. I fully understand that nothing is free. I just want to put it on record that I am vehemently against any more rate hikes right now. I would not support extending this contract one more year unless there's a guarantee that there will not be any more rate hikes until an RFP goes out. And I know there's not a whole lot we can do, and I understand the governor's raising the state of emergency, but at a time when people are still trying to find jobs, losing their unemployment, trying to figure out how to take care of their children when things are shutting down, we should not be shutting off their water. I think it's a horrible, I understand the need, but I think it's a horrible plan of action, and it's a horrible thing to do in the state that we're in right now, and I want to put that on record.
Thank you. And I think also, correct me if I'm wrong, on the delinquent accountants, I agree with you 100%. It's that old double-edged sword.
Yeah.
But if someone has a problem and they come to town and they say, okay, can we work out a payment plan? Or what can we do? How can we try to, you know, a little bit on both sides?
I agree. Maybe we could put that in people's minds first this time around. We understand things are difficult.
Yep.
Within this 2-week period, please contact us.
Yeah.
These are some
Yeah, we have a whole
options maybe.
process. I mean, we don't just go shut their water off.
Well, the
There's a whole
process is to put a bright piece of paper on the doorknob and shut it off. Because, I mean, quite frankly, that's our reminder to pay our bill. So I know that's the process. So I think we can be a little bit more customer-centric, just given how things are right now.
I agree.
That's all.
And if I could speak to that a little bit, well, I'm very much business. I do have a heart. And there isn't a situation where I would want to be shutting water off on a family, and I understand that this year in particular has been extraordinarily difficult for families. And there is a process. It's not going to be, hey, pay your water next week, or we're coming by with a wrench and turning your water off. It takes several months. We provide people an opportunity to get payment plans in place. We don't want to surprise anybody. We don't want to put an unrealistic burden on people. But at the end of the day, the town is also in a situation where it's in a pretty significant financial hole, and we have to try to walk a line there.
Oh, I know. I understand.
Okay.
And just so, I know you weren't on the board when we put this in place, but there's a whole process also for rental units, contacting the landlord, but also letting the residents know that the landlord hasn't paid, and so there's some recourse that way as well. So we try to make sure everybody's aware on the same page in that instance.
That's a good point. Do we have an estimation of how many of the delinquent receivables are homeowners as opposed to rental units?
Oh, I'm sorry, like in terms of owner occupied?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we'd have that data, but we could be able to find a way to get it.
No, it's not that important. It just made me curious when you mentioned it.
I'm curious now too, so we'll take a look. And just another piece, Selectman LaPointe, in reference to a hesitation to extend another year. I've heard the board loud and clear. It's the timing that's really unfortunate for me personally, because that would mean letting it lapse in 2 months, 2.5 months. That's not nearly enough time to either get somebody else in place or to get a system in place to run it on our own. This is something that would take a year or more of planning, and it's just really, really rough timing. And you know, I like to try to perform a miracle every now and again, but this is one I'll tell you I can't do, and that's the only reason that's my recommendation.
Thank you very much. Okay, any further on water, wastewater? All right.
I got a lot, but I'm not going to go there.
We'll have to have a whole meeting for this when the information starts coming back in and stuff like that. Okay, 7.2, review of ambulance rates. Chief Smith, please.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, while the chief is walking to the mic. I did want to reference this ARPA funding spreadsheet. So this is just an effort of transparency from our office and from the office of the DPW, so that anytime money from ARPA hits the account, we'll see it go on this spreadsheet, and anytime we have a recommended expenditure, it's going to go on this spreadsheet too. And every time you get the town manager's report for me at a selectman meeting, I'll be giving you updates on this spreadsheet, so that every dollar that comes in, every dollar that gets out, the public sees it, and they know what it's going towards, and they can actually see it at work. So I referenced the Sherbert Road design. There's also the Robbins Road bridge culvert replacement, which is about $6,500 or so, or excuse me, $650,000 replacement up towards the border of Range. And ARPA can go towards critical infrastructure, including drainage, and so 319 right off the bat would go from that. And that's just an important piece in terms of setting expectations, because I know we keep hearing 3.65, give or take, $1 million, and in the scheme of these projects, that's not a lot, and it's going to go quick. So I just want to make sure people see it as it comes and goes.
Thank you very much. Chief Smith, good evening.
Good evening. Before you today, I wanted to approach, it came up previously at Finance Committee that the rates hadn't been examined in quite a while. So what I did is we put out to a number of area departments to look at what their billing rates were, and lo and behold, we were significantly lower in a number of categories. I then sat down with the town manager. We discussed how we best would go about doing the increase, and the 4 categories that you have before you, the BLS emergency base rate, ALS emergency base rate 1, ALS emergency base rate 2, and mileage were the 4 that we were significantly lacking in. I know right off the bat, the first thing that's going to come up is that this is a difficult time with changing fees. I understand that. Fortunately for Winchendon, out of the percentages that we collect and is billed out, only 7% comes from self-pay. We are a very high rate of our ambulance billing comes from insurance companies. These companies, they pay a set amount, Medicare pays a set amount, so it wouldn't really change the Medicare amounts. We have no control over that. That's something that is yearly given to us, what the Medicare and Mass Health rates are going to be. We go through that. The only significant difference we have is at the end of the year, we can, midway through the year, we put in for additional reimbursements from Medicare. And through that application, we get some significant dollars. I think this year is like $54,000. We brought in extra due to the amount of Medicare patients we have. So
And I'm sorry, Chief, what percent is that people pay out of pocket?
7%
7, thank you.
is the self-pay.
Self-pay, yeah, thank you.
The rates before you don't bring us to be the highest. They don't bring us where we were, and some of them were almost the lowest. It kind of keeps us pretty significantly in the middle. Really like to get the board's blessing on this and moving forward with it. It is some dollars left on the table at this point with the ability to bill certain things more. I certainly would be once, if it did go through, I'd approach Coastal Medical and they would put the changes in immediately as far as starting the following day. Like to hear any questions that the board has on the topic. I'm sure you have some.
Well, I dug out my calculator earlier today to find the average. You know, you add all the numbers and you divide that by the number of numbers you put in. And I found that the recommendations that you're making are actually higher than that average, if you will. We are lower than the average on, I think one of the categories, but our current rate is lower than average. And then I look at, like under the BLS emergency base rate, there were 18 towns listed there. We're fifth highest. So I'm just looking at where we stand, ratio. So we're third highest in mileage. ALS 1, we are fourth. ALS 2, we're fifth of anywhere from 16 to 18 towns. So my interpretation of this is, we're in the upper third. I recognize that 7% is self-paid. Those 7%, I'm sorry, the remaining 93% is insurance paid or Medicare paid, but I pay insurance premiums. So through the insurance companies, I'm paying these rates. So I'm not so sure that that is an argument that I would put a lot of weight on, whether it's through insurance and Medicaid or directly out of pocket. I do understand it's maybe 60-30, 75-25 as far as weight. So I don't think I'm adverse to perhaps tweaking some of these, but I think if we really want to be middle of the pack, some of your recommendations would have to come down. Those are my thoughts.
I would like to just add in one quick thing that might explain that a little bit.
Sure.
Coming forward, within the year, our ambulance supplies are going to significantly increase. We're trying to get a little bit ahead of this by being a little bit higher than middle of the pack. We're currently, right now, our supplies we get at Hayward Hospital. Hayward Hospital is going to, at some point within the next year, start billing us for those said supplies. Up until now, it's been something that we restock. We're able to restock on a number of the supplies. And coming forward, it's going to be charging that additional increase. As much as I don't want to have, personally, I think it's always better to be a little bit higher, a little bit ahead of middle of the pack, but that's just a little bit of competitiveness in me, I guess, on that.
Yeah, and actually, with that additional information about it's going to cost us more to provide these services.
It's going to cost more in reviewing it now to get ourselves ahead as we are starting to move forward with these potential costs.
Right.
I'd just like to see us not be chasing our tail and trying to bring in a little bit more income into it is an income, and at the end of the day, our goal is to provide the best patient care, but there is a business aspect to it too. Unfortunately, that's just part of it. And all our costs are constantly going up, and there's just no way around it at this point.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. Many years ago, I worked in industrial distribution, and we had a wrench on the shelf that we sold for $5. But if we got a price increase notification, and to replace that wrench, it was going to cost us $6, you have to take that into account for what you're selling the wrench for.
Right.
So kind of it's the same thing.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward?
So of the 93% that you say is paid by insurance or Medicare, does that pay 100% for all those folks?
That percentage is not any, like, it includes Medicare where they only pay a set fee. They say pay a set amount. We can't then go after them and bill the patient for the balance, say. So say we charge $12.75 for a BLS run, and Medicare tells us that we can only collect $315. We can't say, okay, we collected $315 from Medicare. Patient X, you owe us $815. We can't do that. They won't allow us to double bill. If there's a set amount, and that's what the set amount is. The insurance companies, on a majority of them, outside of a majority of them, they have again, it's in the industry standard on what they will pay. A majority of them, and hopefully it continues, will pay the full amount or close to the full amount. I know we've worked out a policy here too, where if we have somebody in town, they can approach us as far as if they do owe money on an ambulance bill, and they can fill out a form and go through a process with us to abate it. And in the 9 years I've been here, I think I can count on one hand how many requests for abatement that I've received from individuals as far as not feeling they should pay the bill, not going and paying the bill, or something of that nature. So I can't speak for each individual insurance company. Each one is different. I can speak specifically on Medicare because I know Medicare, they're a very set amount.
So the 7%, is that totally collected, or is there any that we can't collect, that they're not paying?
There's always some that we don't pay, I don't have the exact breakdown of how many of that 7%. We do after 12 months, we review it. At a certain point, according to the policy, it does go to a collection agency if it's over $100. I believe it was over $100 in the policy. At that point, then, there's a number of, Coastal will do their best. If the person says they can send $10 a month, well, they're making their best effort. And in these times, I think the best effort is all we can ask for on those. I can't say exactly how much of that 7% is owed or completely.
So when we say 7%, how many people are we talking about?
7% last year. Out of all we had 1,325 ambulance runs.
Wow.
And transports. And we had 89 were self-pay people. Realistically, to me, that seems it's a little like it should be even lower, because I know part of in Massachusetts, the healthcare initiatives and that, a lot of that is self-pay, but a lot of the self-pay is because some insurance companies will send the check directly to the individual, and the individual is supposed to pay us and pay the bill. And unfortunately, sometimes they get the check from their insurance company, and it doesn't trickle exactly back to us the way it should. So some of that would affect those numbers. I just don't have the technology to run it all myself as a analyst when it comes to that.
And the only concern I had, looking at the percentage of increase, for the ALS, it was an 11% increase you're requesting. For the ALS 2 emergency, it's a 9%. It's a 17% increase for the mileage. But the BLS emergency, that's a 34% increase. That one seems high to me.
That's a category that we were drastically lower in. If you look where we were $950. It's something that, it's also our most common, BLS 1 is our most common transport rate. So going forward with, as we need to purchase certain supplies in that's going to be our largest hit, so to speak, when it comes to replacing the in doing the rates. Again, trying to stay a little bit ahead of the curve to try to not only stay what I feel is ethically fair, but also try to stay with what we need to bring in as a department to help the town sustain our department. Again, this is something that, ambulance billing, certainly it goes into the general fund, but it's no secret, it also comes back to us as a budget. So we have a budget that, we need to work and provide services for, but sometimes, as we've seen with other budgets, we need to try to increase that a little bit to try to make it competitive with what is still needed to provide the service.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Yes,
I
Mrs.
have a
Salter.
question. Do we know, like, what our fixed costs are, like, per run? What's the minimum that it cost us to go out on? Is there, like, I guess what I'm saying is, to be fair, I mean, we are a business, but if you want to increase, are we increasing it enough? Because we certainly should at least increase it enough to cover our cost. But to be fair to the people, the residents of Winchton, we shouldn't be making a huge profit off of something like ambulance support. So I guess I'm just wondering.
As far as the exact cost on a run, that kind of varies incredibly depending on really how deep you want to dive into what we use. If we're looking at ambulance costs, if we're looking at apparatus, the actual apparatus, the personnel that are on shift. Some days you may have 10 ambulance calls, other days we may only have 2. Ambulance prices, we've gone dramatically. The last truck we just bought, it was like $100,000 more than the previous truck. Their prices are, and when we have to purchase the next one, it's going to be even more. So it's hard to cost because the manufacturers are juggling things so much, and especially over this past year, we've seen, gloves that we normally would buy 40 boxes of gloves for, a couple $100. Suddenly, we're getting billed to buy the same 40 cases of gloves as $1,200. So we've tried to stockpile some things that we can, that we don't, as far as to take advantage of areas we know the costs are going to increase dramatically. But at the same time, without having, it's like a month-to-month progression on ambulance. We shop around with vendors, but an exact amount, I wouldn't want to give you a guess and be.
Oh no,
way
that's
off
fine.
either
I didn't
way.
know if we did that. That's all that I'm asking. If we look at it that approach.
I haven't looked at it
And I
that
know
approach. We kind of
it's-
looked at it as in the area towns. We talked to some of the billing companies. I talked to the area chiefs. We went with what the trends have been throughout, and just like our increases on, we normally, on call volume and that, we don't really know how much the call volume is going to be either, so trying to piece it together, it's a little difficult to do it that way.
Okay.
I know I didn't answer your question
No,
exactly
that's
on
fine. That's all
but-
that I wanted to know, and I've asked other departments the same thing, and that's not how we break things down. I was just wondering, okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mrs. Lapointe.
Chief, do you have an estimation of where, either the current or the proposed rates kind of sit relative to the Medicare payment, and what, like, the average health plan will pay for the private insurance?
It depends on the nature of the call, and that's where you get the different categories.
Mm-hmm.
Medicare,
Let's say BLS, for example. Where does Medicare payment fall on that?
Medicare payment on a BLS call, without having it exactly in front of me, I would say would fall someplace between $325 and $350.
Oh, so way, way below.
Way below.
Okay.
You're not even, Medicare on any of their things aren't even on the chart on what we actually get paid for on Medicare patients.
Right, and so we're losing a ton of money.
Not
Losing money, but not recouping.
We're not recouping the
Right.
money on the Medicare patients, which does give us a little bit more of a push to try to recoup it on some areas where we can. It just to try to make it even on, so I don't get yelled at when I turn my budget into him and tell him what I really need.
Thank you.
But I must say, the other thing I would say is having my parents on Medicare, having used the ambulance multiple times, they have never paid for the ambulance.
Right.
Yep.
And they have Medicare.
Right. Stop.
So,
Right.
no, they look at it to the reason why. Obviously, if someone abuses it, you know, could be, but my parents have never paid for an
We
ambulance,
get a
and we've
300
used it multiple
I've gotten a
times.
$300 bill every time we used it.
No, they have Medicare, and they have a supplemental policy.
Which one's old people?
Medicaid often.
Medicare
I get them confused.
is when you're 65 and older through
That's
Social
it.
Security. That's Medicare.
And then you
that's
go
what
with
my
the Part
parents
D
have.
and all of that noise?
Once you reach 65, you can go on Medicare.
Okay, because we're talking about my mom. And it was always a $300 bill for her.
My parents have never paid.
And then supplemental insurance you can get.
Well, that's
Because
what I
they have
mean,
a
the Part
supplemental
D.
policy, though I will say that.
Right.
Do you have
I
an
knew
idea-
enough to ask that question.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of where the average health plan falls on the BLS chart for what they approve and will pay?
I do not have that.
Okay, okay.
And again, that even varies dramatically lately. You'll get health insurance companies that'll, first they'll send you, oh, we'll settle, we'll pay you this, but we'll pay it now. Or we'll pay you the full amount in a month or 2 months. And the insurance game is a very crazy world out there when it comes to the insurance companies. And that's why one of the main reasons we don't do our own billing, it's a billing company, because just the forms themselves for each insurance company is 80, 90 pages long that they send us to fill out. So it's quite a process as far as that goes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Anything further for Chief?
I
Chief
do.
Yes, Mrs. Anderson.
Okay, I have a couple things. First thing, I just want to say, and I have the same issue with the water report that we received from Veolia. When you compare yourselves to other towns and you're in the top third, and you go, but look, we're not the most expensive town, that's not a goal.
No.
I just want to say that. That when you're in that top third, you're up there. And so we have to take that into account and be sensitive to it. The second thing was actually back on the issue of when I had to call, and I was calling quite frequently for an ambulance and the EMS to come to my house with my mom. And I knew it was $300 because she told me every time I called them. And several times, depending on how bad she was feeling, she wouldn't go in the ambulance because she wasn't going to pay that $300. In which case, I had to take her to the emergency room and then get yelled at by the ER doctors because she should have come in an ambulance. But she was 81 and she wasn't going to do it. And so I think the ambulance came out anyway, and then she said, nope, Barb's going to take me. And I would take her. So how much money are we losing by calling the ambulance to come out, diagnose her, and then have to leave for me to take her to the ER anyway? Does that make sense?
It does. The answer is probably a twofold answer. The first part is probably figuring out a way, and we've tried to work on it with especially with a lot of our elderly clientele, on educating them on the importance of, you need the ambulance, you need to call the ambulance, and plain and simple, and you need to go. But we also try to explain to them that the fact whether they can or can't pay for the run, whether they have insurance or don't have insurance.
I don't think it's a matter of can or can't. It's a matter of will or won't.
And that's...
And they're 80 plus.
We try to, it's hard to get that through to people, whether they're old or young. We've got young people that say the same thing. I don't really look at it as losing money at that point, even though our ambulance went out and hopefully they still provide a service by checking the person and talking to them. If they don't come with us and we can talk them into going with you, then to me that's still a win, even though the ER doctor's going to yell at you and we're going to hear, well, why didn't you pick so-and-so up and bring them? It's the end game is they get to the hospital, which is our goal. And we try to, that's not going to change if we told them that they were only paying $25 probably to pay. I think at the end of it, they're still going to say, well, I can still have my daughter take me.
Right.
And that's just it's a different work ethic, I think, and that's a whole different conversation.
But so then I suppose you don't have the mileage to and from the hospital, you don't have any supplies, any gauze, any
Right,
saline,
yeah.
any IVs, right?
But the point is, it costs money to have that ambulance, and I knew it, I was a selectman at the time, I'm acutely aware of the fact that we called them out here. It's costing money for them to sit and assess her, which they always did, and they do a remarkable job. And even against their better judgment, she would insist, if she could speak, she wasn't always able to when she got the ambulance ride then. But if she could speak, she would say, nope, not taking it.
And that's some of the areas where some of the other calls make up for the fact that we do have a lot of calls that are refusals. We had, COVID created an incredible amount of refusals at first in the last year. We would do a number of, we'd go, people were sick. No, I'm still not going to the hospital. That's where you're going to get sick. We're going to get sicker there.
Right.
And it's come back around now to where people are being transported again. So we need to, we just try to stay to where we're ahead of what we're trying to, the service we're trying to provide.
Anything further?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward.
Just one more question. When was the last time that these 4 categories were increased?
Oh, your last question's a trick question.
I believe,
2016.
I was just going to say, I want to say 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago at least. It really should be almost looked at yearly.
We did it.
We just didn't, we shouldn't, because every year it may change, and again, I could be sitting here again in a year if that's what we need to continue to stay not only competitive, but hopefully we don't need to do that, but it should be examined pretty much yearly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Barbara and I, when we came on, and Amy. we had
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Okay, anything else before we make a decision? Questions, comments, motion?
What do you need from us?
I would assume I just need a motion to increase the fees to the ones that are before you tonight, and then I can go to a coastal with that.
You can just do a motion as presented.
Yeah. I move the board approve the requested fee increases for the specific ambulance billing categories as presented this evening. And per Robert's rule, the chair is allowed to make motions.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve. Any further discussion?
Can I just,
Anderson?
I am very concerned about, especially the elderly who would be refusing a ride. I know it, I've been there and I've lived it, and it's not fun to have to drive somebody to the hospital, and you're worried about whether they're gonna make it there. So if they're, if we're seeing some pushback, could you come back and let us know?
Absolutely. I mean, these, quite honestly, they can be revisited.
Sorry,
Mrs. Alsbach?
I was just gonna say, and I don't know if it's an option on the table, and Chief, you'd probably be able to tell me, but there is an option to have an ambulance bill abatement committee, so that people that meet a certain threshold, low income, elderly, have an opportunity to partially abate or completely abate the bill. And I actually got one off the ground myself when I was with the town of Tingsboro, and it was not abused. It was frequently used, but it was just an extra layer of security for people that really needed it.
I feel like we already made that policy.
We do have that in place.
Okay.
That was what I had referred to. I've had a handful in my 9 years here that have approached on it, and
I feel like
I'm pretty easily approachable when it comes to that. So it's
right. My concern is not the people who would use it or abuse it. My concern is those people who will not accept the ambulance ride.
Then that's a matter of, public awareness and educating them.
We do try to do that on every call.
I understand that. Some people, I don't think that's, unfortunately, I don't think that's anything that we can control.
Barbara, the other thing that I will say, because I've seen this, that when you have an expense that you can't exactly identify because it's so general and there are so many factors, one of the way of pricing is going with trends.
Is
You
going
look
what?
at the trends
Yeah, but
And when
to-
you
to
see
be in
them,
the
you know,
upper
going up,
third-
that's what you have to do. It's an acceptable way of like pricing.
I feel like we're looking at the wrong goal. And I just feel that we could be hurting people. That they'd be less likely to call an ambulance when they need one. They'll be less likely to take advantage of the service.
We don't see a lot of that, honestly. At least that approaches us on it, or even talks to our medics in the field. And I talk to the medics routinely about the elderly, or what they say when they're out on the calls and that. And routinely, you don't have, if one of my medics even remotely feels that they have an issue, that someone's not calling because they don't want to pay, that quite frequently, we'll try to reach out and we'll try to talk them into, explaining to them. And I mean, I've had people call and ask questions, and you call them back, and can they come down and talk to you in the office when they got out of the hospital? I've had patients come and sit and, been thankful that they did do that, and we went over it with them. And I understand what you're saying as far as you don't want people hesitating to call, but at the same time, I want to be able to put forward the service and the supplies and the truck and that needs to be able to respond to, even if it's just to try to talk them into going some other way. I still need to bring the money into the service to send those same trucks and people out to, go into it. Even like an EpiPen now is, I think, up to $300 and something just for one pen. I mean, it's just the supplies are just crazy prices right now.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mrs. Lapointe.
Perhaps we could do, if the rates are approved, actually, even if they're not, maybe we could do some sort of public awareness. Campaign's a strong word, but even something on the fire department website or the town website, just kind of subtly highlighting the payment plan and/or abatement option, just so people are more aware. Again, being proactive and kind of just putting it out there, not to lose all of our money again, but just to be customer-centric and realize there's...
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. All right, anything further? We have a motion on?
Nope, all set.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve them as presented. It has been properly seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All in favor say aye.
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 No.
Chair votes aye. Mrs. Anderson?
I'm going to go no.
Thank you. The motion passes. 3 ayes, 2 noes. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving on, CDBG, Housing Rehab Discharge of Mortgage. It's a loan that's been paid off, therefore we can discharge the mortgage. Pretty straightforward. Any questions for Ms. Murphy? Anything unusual about this, Tracy?
There is not. It's pretty standard. It's a 3-year-old housing rehab mortgage, so there's 3 years depreciated value.
All right. Any questions from the board? Seeing and hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward?
I move the board approve the discharge of mortgage for 21 Ash Street as presented this evening.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the request. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that forward. Okay, next up, Town Manager's Signing Authority. Ms. Murphy?
Yes, I'm here tonight to ask, when I inherited this program, the housing rehab program, the past practice was that the town manager would sign the mortgages. But there was never any policy put in place that the town manager was able to sign the discharges of mortgages. So I'm here tonight to ask the board to consider what you just approved for signatures of a discharge, that you allow the town manager to sign those documents. One of the other reasons is I try to maintain some confidentiality for our housing rehab clients, and I feel that I'm teetering on not keeping my word to them by coming in a public forum to ask for this.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board?
Not sure how I feel about that. I'm not sure.
Mrs. Anderson?
I'm thinking.
Okay.
Even though we almost never question this, I don't think we ever have questioned this.
Yeah, it's almost just like a wrap-up of the whole program.
But I question giving up authority to something.
Ward, Tracy, is there any timing issue with, holding these until a board meeting?
There are
detriment?
times when there's a closing coming up and they want this, but I don't bring these to the board until I get the payment for the payoff. So typically, these can't be signed before the closing anyways.
Right, okay.
Because the closing is when they will pay this off.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I just didn't know, because obviously the town manager is more readily available than the board. Perhaps just keep the board informed when such a thing happens?
Or, yeah, like say that, like, this month 4 CDBG loans have been discharged, something to that extent.
Yeah. Maybe in your town manager report, every now and then, just give us an update on.
Just because when we tend to give up that authority, it's kind of like when we moved to the tablets and we stopped getting our paper accounts from the accountant.
Yeah.
We tend to give stuff up and then it's gone. Not that
But
I can
Barbara,
see.
it's not like we see the paperwork for these,
No.
It's just as easy for Tracy to go to Justin and say, here, this is paid off, here's the proof, and let him sign it,
Right,
than-
and so I think
And I
this is a
agree,
strange thing.
It should be a private, it's.
But
it's not-
remember when we were first elected, we used to get these reports, these financial reports, and go back to that water and sewer,
Well, we can.
because I'm not looking at those papers every month or whenever they were
But I think
released.
this is kind of like a different,
I know,
I look
but I
at
got
it
it
differently.
stuck in my
And
head.
I agree, the privacy
Yeah.
factor.
And, well, perhaps, Justin, you don't have to give us the specifics, just say, this month, Tracy and I worked on discharging 3 feed liens, they're all set, and move forward, something like that.
That's definitely something I'd be up for doing, and I definitely understand where it could be another thing that it kind of dissolves into the background if it never actually comes before you, and you never really kind of think of it, and it's out of sight, out of mind. So I wouldn't mind providing some type of informal, email-style report monthly or as needed, just to let the board know when these do roll through. And then,
That would be
honestly,
helpful.
if there were ever any questions about any of them, it's probably something that would be covered under an executive session exemption for real estate.
That is correct.
Should you like to protect
Yeah.
people's privacy, if you want to do a deeper dive on something, if an issue comes up.
I'm happy to provide a report or anything. I just try
We
to.
don't do that many either.
It's maybe 2 or 3 a year.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's just nice to know that the mortgage has been repaid, or will be repaid, and stuff like that.
In all honesty, the purpose of this program isn't for the town to make money on these mortgages. The purpose is to help people fix their homes and stay in them for 15 years. The only time they have to pay these back is if they sell their home.
Right.
And we really don't want them to do that. We want them to stay in their homes.
Okay. So would you be okay with that, Barbara? Okay. Any further questions? Seeing and hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward,
I move the board authorize the town manager to sign future discharge of mortgages related to CDBG loans as presented this evening.
thank you. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the request. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. Okay, next up, town and school vendor payroll warrants. As you recall, previous town manager, we had given Ms. Hickey the authorization in the event where a certain number of signatures were needed to release checks, and for whatever reason it was difficult to get that number of signatures from the board. Mr. Hickey had the authority to step in and sign those, so it didn't hold things up. So we're being asked this evening to consider to allow the new town manager, Mr. Saltzback, the same authority. Questions, comments?
Are you comfortable with that authority?
I am comfortable with it if the board is comfortable with it. It's a task that I've handled in the past in the absence of the town administrator in Tingsboro.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Anderson?
I think, in hindsight, and having gone through COVID and everything, and looking back at it, I'm comfortable with it if he had to do it, if those documents could be uploaded for our perusal on Dropbox, like they were, unfortunately, at the end, by the time he figured it out, but, if he has to do it, he has to do it. But just so that we're not caught authorizing the town manager to do whatever
No, I understand what you're saying.
without our oversight. That make sense?
It does.
It sounds harsh, but I didn't mean it that way.
No, I understand that. Just, again, keep us in the loop to know
Yeah.
that on this date, Justin had to step in and sign.
And this is what I signed. And so
Right.
that we can look at it and say, yeah, that was fine.
Would upload to Dropbox, or, I don't know, would like a photocopy of the front, that first page that we all sign? I mean, you don't have the specifics of what's on that warrant, but just a copy of that, put on our signage page, so next time we come in, we can see.
Well, isn't the Dropbox super secret? Super secret, right?
Secret.
Super secret file.
It is, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's all public anyway, and I would prefer more eyes beyond anything I'm doing. Transparency is important, so I don't want to be doing anything in a vacuum anyway. So
No, I'm
that's my
certainly not
preference.
accusing you of that.
Yeah.
I just don't need a resident saying, hey, you dope, you let him do whatever he wanted, right? And I go, and you know what I have to say?
What did he do?
Right.
Because we don't know.
I don't know.
And the more eyes,
Did
the
I?
better, genuinely. I think on a lot of those things, it's always good to have an extra fresh set of eyes sometimes.
Yeah, that was an actual genuine conversation I had with somebody at one point.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Lapointe?
2 points. One, I think I would, not specific to Mr. Saltzback, but in general, in the town manager position, I would prefer it to be in an extenuating circumstance that the authority was there, but the general practice is that we come in and do it, and then if time, if that's failing, then go ahead. Second point, I was in labor for one of my children signing the school committee warrant because it was just emailed to me. I mean, it's something, that's doable and approvable remotely. Sorry, I forget I have the mask on and I'm.
She was in
typing away.
labor.
I was
and
saying,
had to sign the warrants.
You can approve. Yeah, that's all. So
Yeah,
I mean,
I can't-
it's not.
I
I'm
can't
saying
make
it's not impossible to disseminate the information and
all
blah blah
right.
blah blah blah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I felt really bad. A couple of weeks ago, it was a Thursday evening, I think, and Taylor's calling around, someone's calling around to try to get a third signature
Yeah.
so they could release the checks that people are waiting for. So it's, again, I agree, extenuating circumstances, not general practice. And we as a board, as part of our commitment, is
Right.
get here to sign if at all possible. And actually, during the pandemic, Linda actually offered, I couldn't leave Rick one day, she offered to drive them out to the house for me. So, above and beyond. No, I ended up being able to get in, but, so yeah. Anything further on this issue?
It's fine.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Ward?
I move the board authorize the town manager to sign vendor and payroll warrants on behalf of the Board of Selectmen in extenuating circumstances where the board has been reached out to and a majority of the board is unavailable to sign for payment of town funds at the time they are scheduled to be released.
I like that emphasis on extenuating circumstances. Very
Second.
nice. We have a second, thank you. Any further discussion?
Just to amend it to say, and the board will be made aware when it has to happen. Something like that. Just that
And-
we'll be made aware.
And the
if it
board
happens.
will be made aware if in fact that is necessary.
Right.
I thought they said they're going to reach out to all the,
But he reached out, but how do I know if he reached out to everybody? Only I said, no, I couldn't make it. And I didn't know he went down the line and nobody else could make it either.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this says, they've tried to reach us to sign, but for whatever reason, we can't. So the amendment she's asking for is, so he will sign, and the Board of Selectmen will be notified of the necessity of him signing, something like that.
I amend my motion to include that addition you just.
Okay.
Second the
fairly
amendment.
clear, Linda? Okay.
The spirit is understood.
Seconder
Yes,
of
I
the
did.
motion?
I
Thank
did.
you very much. Okay, so we have the amended motion. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Last page, wow. Okay. Update on Kalon Farm pop-up bullyard. Mr. Zaltzback.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As requested, I'm providing an update on this event that we have down on Central Street. It's run for 5 weekends now, and I've checked in repeatedly every Monday with both our chiefs, just making sure everything went smoothly and was quiet over the weekend. They actually haven't received a single call on the pop-up bullyard, which I was happy to hear. I have received one noise complaint from a nearby neighbor, and I actually took the time to come in yesterday to sit down with the owners of Bull Spit and a couple neighbors and have a discussion about noise levels and other items, and everybody walked away from the table happy, so that was a productive conversation. Bull Spit has been an excellent partner throughout this entire process. They have really shown a commitment to be part of the community. They don't want to just run a business and happen to be here. They want to be part of it, and that's very important. And I think it's an important piece in terms of drawing foot traffic onto Central Street and into our downtown. We've received a lot of good feedback from our businesses in terms of the amount of increase that they've seen in people just being in the downtown area and shopping at their stores and spending money buying food, and that's been really nice to see as well. And that realistically is a big part of what all of this is about. Is it's not only improving the property down at Four Summer, and it's not only taking in the tax revenue, which we'll certainly welcome. I think a big part of it's building community and supporting the other businesses all up and down Central Street as well by the draw that property's going to provide. So long and short of it is that's the review. It's been 5 weeks. It's been quiet. It's largely been a positive. And so we'll continue to update as we go along. And I do know they intend to come in at a future meeting and ask to extend pretty much as far as weather will allow into the fall. So that's something the board can review at that time and have an additional conversation with the owners.
Thank you. Next, remote participation of meetings for citizen participation. Mr. Salzback.
I will hand that off to Mrs. Daigle, who's done an excellent job coordinating that effort.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Daigle.
Access AV did come and review our...
Closer to the mic,
Sorry.
please.
Access AV has been in to review again, including the second floor, and in your packets is a estimate of what the cost would be. It's $8,700, and there's probably an extra cost for a laptop that wasn't included that we will need. There's a little bit more information on here. I don't know if you want to go through it. I know I talked about how it's going to work. We have also the thought of, if it's not the 7 committees that have to be broadcast live, there's only 7 that would use the system because it's going to be tied in here. What do we do with the other committees? Is it the board's intention that all the other boards and committees that we have also have the same Zoom availability to participate that way? There's additional equipment that can be purchased. I think it's about $1,000 for what I've looked into so far. I would like to look a little bit more and talk to Don to get his opinion, but just didn't know from the board what your thoughts were on that aspect of it.
Isn't it,
Mrs. Anderson?
correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it like the big 3 that have to be broadcast live? And say, if one of the other boards is meeting, when FinCom School Committee or us are meeting, then they've never been live. They don't possibly have to have the Zoom feature, just the live meetings. Is that wrong of me to think that?
No, but it's more than 3, Madam Chair. There's 7 committees that are required to be broadcast live. It's Board of Selectmen, School Committee, Finance Committee, Board of Health, Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Conservation Commission.
Well, isn't it the only time that one of the other boards or committees can't be broadcast live is if one of the big 3 are using the big room, correct?
Correct. So what we try and alternate the days so that you don't conflict, especially the selectmen and the school committee. I think there's a bylaw that's saying we can't have meetings on the same night to conflict.
But,
So,
like, say, for instance, and this is where I'm getting screwed up, like,
Yeah.
for tonight, Board of Health was upstairs on the 4th
Right.
floor, and they weren't live because we were live.
correct. So in that case, when that happens, there's a camera upstairs, a video camera, and they record their meeting live, and then we rebroadcast that. We import that file, and we're able to at least rebroadcast it. The Board of Health normally meets the first Monday, and you meet the second, but
Right.
they had a cancellation, so they had to switch.
So you're asking about having the ability for multiple meetings at the same time to have access to this?
No, the question I was asking you about, a different system, say, for instance,
The Parks
Re-
Committee,
Yeah, the
right?
Recreation Commission or the Historic Commission, those aren't required to be
I see,
live, broadcast live.
right.
So if you wanted that option for public participation, hybrid from home, you would have to have additional equipment.
And you have a quote on that already, or you do not?
I briefly looked into it. It's
Sorry, what was the
1,000.
question?
If she had a quote on that already or not, I couldn't remember what she said.
This little cute little owl system, yeah.
Mm.
That's about $1,000, and it just basically would sit on a tripod wherever they're meeting, whether it's upstairs here, the library. And it's like a camera, so whenever somebody's talking, it'll be attached to a laptop, part of the Zoom meeting. They would be part of it in this sense. I don't know if this is the best one, it's just one that the MMA had talked about at one of the meetings that they had, so I just pulled this information just to get an idea for you tonight.
Chair?
Yes, Mr. Ward.
What is the cost of this Owl Pro camera?
I believe it's $1,000. I looked it up on Amazon, and that's about $1,000.
Personally, I don't see the need for it. We get the 7, the bylaw says we have to do those, and those all meet in this building, either on the 4th floor or down here. And if the Recreation Commission, and they meet in this building too on the 2nd floor, if they want to be broadcast live, then they just have to schedule a night when nobody else is using this floor, or the 4th floor. So it's just a scheduling thing. The library meets at the library, but I can tell you from being a trustee over there for many years, I've never had a person interested in what's going on at our meetings. I mean, these are the big 7. This is where the interest is. Unfortunately, the other, and I know now the rec committee is meeting out at, the Winchendon Park Committee is meeting out at the park. So I think getting all these $1,000 pieces for each committee is, and then repair, and I think we're good with, if you want to meet here, or have it videotaped and played on TV later. That's just I'm happy with the 7 we have.
So would it be one of these owl units, wherever the unit is, for everyone to use, all the other commissions, or would it be one unit for each recreation or whatever?
Council on Aging, all that.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Daigle?
it's portable, so you can move it wherever you need to take it to.
Okay.
But may I clarify something? Mr. Ward, the equipment that we have in the box here, in the door back there, it's only specific to those meetings. You wouldn't be able to say, have the library trustees down here and have the Zoom interaction without having an operator back there. So typically, we wouldn't have enough personnel probably to cover all of those meetings. We would have to, if you're looking at doing that, also have an increase in staff.
So what the system would do would be to allow the other outside the main ones
Yes.
to broadcast.
To have Zoom interaction. So it would be just a
Interaction.
regular, if you were having a Zoom meeting without the live broadcast,
Yeah.
it'd be just a Zoom meeting so people outside could participate. The public that couldn't make it to the meeting could participate.
Okay.
And so only one member of whatever committee would need to have the owl with them, correct?
That the owl would, we could purchase more than one owl if you
No,
wanted to.
I'm just, it would be like me having my laptop participating in a Zoom meeting, right? We would just need one owl somewhere.
Yep.
For an entire.
Madam Chair, I could bring more information about this specific thing. I think this evening it'd be a good thing to talk about whether or not you want to move forward with updating the broadcast equipment, if that's something you wish to do, to spend the funds on it. There is CARES funds, according to town manager, that there is some CARES funds that can be used to purchase this equipment.
Well, I would like to see it in place for the boards and committees that do broadcast. So I think, yes, it's a chunk of money. The equipment can be covered by the CARES Act. And I know people say, Rick, like you just said, nobody was at the meetings and stuff like that, but we saw such a change this past year because we were quarantined, and the participation, not just in Winchton, but across the state, just exploded. I think it's worth the investment for maybe, one of those portable units.
One.
And see how it goes. Do people use it? I think it'd be a good investment, and it shows good faith that we're looking to continue that two-way conversation with the participants as well as the group that's meeting. So that's kind of my thought.
I agree.
Mrs. Anderson?
Thank you. I'm trying to be smooth. Mr. Saganowitz is letting me know that, has anybody checked into Zoom rooms?
Zoom rooms.
Zoom rooms. I looked them up, and apparently CARES Act will pay for 100% of it. And you can install them in all public buildings, and any meeting can be broadcast and enable remote participation.
What is it?
Zoom?
Is it like an
Zoom
owl?
rooms.
Is it strictly software? Okay, download. Zoom Rooms Video Conference Room Solutions.
So maybe we, town manager on it, you got it?
I'm looking.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Daigle?
And my question would be,
Right.
would that interact with the system? So you would have the live broadcast with it and also the live streaming?
Right.
That's the issue, because this equipment actually directly connects into the system. When we first started doing the Zoom meetings, we were here, the town manager, myself, and Taylor were actually sitting here, we had our laptops up, we had the system on, and then we had all kind of interference and background noise, so we couldn't actually sit down here and do it that way.
Madam Chair?
That's a good point.
Yes, Mrs. Lapointe?
Lyndon, do you know off the top of your head, is there any sort of monthly or annual fee? Broadcasting isn't the right word, but, to have the owl live, is there any sort of plan fee, or is it just the purchasing the hardware fee and that's it?
I believe it's just the equipment.
Okay, because I did notice the Zoom room is $42 a month billed annually, so I don't know if that's, obviously we would have to do more research. I was just.
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Daigle?
We do pay a Zoom fee to utilize Zoom, so the town and the school have an account, and that is
Right.
a annual fee.
So we can look into this maybe during the next couple weeks and bring something back to the board. It's looking like there's a monthly fee for the service in addition to the fee we already pay, and then in addition, the actual physical Zoom room is equipment that effectively does, it sounds like, what the Owl does or what other things do. It's pretty much picking a room and then outfitting it with the same type of audio video equipment that we're describing. But we can maybe dig a little deeper and compare it to what we have lined up. And then just as a reminder, this is eligible to be paid for through CARES, but that ends in December. So something to be mindful of as well, that it's an unbudgeted expense, which I'm sure we could find the money somewhere, but just something to be mindful of.
If we can't find the money, I am 100% confident I can secure a donation for it.
You could secure what?
A donation.
Donation for it.
Thank you. We'll do our best, though.
Yeah, but as we just said, this is kind of, we're talking apples and oranges. This is apples with that room there. And then the oranges would be this other system. So we have before us this evening the memo for integrating with our existing live broadcasting equipment to the tune of $8,744.50. So the question becomes, what is the board's pleasure?
Well,
Mrs.
my
Anderson?
understanding is that we have money in the CARES Act to pay for this equipment upgrades. Is that correct?
Correct. So we could pay for the equipment up front, but any long-term costs in terms of hiring an additional staff member to man the Zoom or monthly fees, there's no guarantee that'll be paid for after December. But given the way things are going, I would anticipate they're probably going to be re-upping, unfortunately, through the winter. But we'll see.
And I know because I attended the school committee meeting this week, or last week it was, that they've got a lot of interest as well. That, you know, a lot of parents can't make it to school committee meetings. And unfortunately, because obviously they have children. And they really are missing that aspect. So I think it's important, and we've gotten used to it. I'll be honest, we've gotten used to it, and people at home have gotten used to it.
All right, so what's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Lapointe?
I move the board approve the upgrades to our cable video broadcast system to include equipment to allow for hybrid meetings as presented this evening in Ms. Daigle's memo.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the upgrades. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And if you would just continue, Justin, to, look into that other owl or something along that line.
Absolutely.
For everyone else. Okay, thank you very much. All right, Town Manager's Report. Mr. Solzback.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a couple items I'm going to skip over just because they're a little repetitive given the late hour. Veterans payments have been made and certified by the state, so we'll be rolling out those on a consistent basis moving forward. We once again thank the families that were impacted by that delay. We wanted to make sure we got the numbers right. So they've since fixed that, and will be smooth sailing moving forward. Our veterans agent and I are also going to have a meet and greet coming up at the end of the month, so the veterans have an opportunity to meet both Steve and myself because we're both relatively new and we want to form that relationship. I coordinated with department heads to develop a list of capital items that would fall under the state ARPA umbrella. So once again, we have our local amount that we've been referencing. The state has a separate multi-billion-dollar fund.
I'm sorry, a little bit slower.
Sorry. Thank you. You caught me. The whole time I've been trying to really...
You've been good up to now.
I've been good. I have been coordinating with department heads to develop a list of capital items that would fall under the state ARPA umbrella. So what I referenced was there's the local portion that we're frequently talking about that we have complete control over. The state has a separate portion that's several $billions that they'll be doling out. So we wanted to give our State House delegation a heads up of what some of our infrastructure needs are. So just from our department heads alone, we came up with $96 million in needs, and that didn't include roads. So once again, just setting expectations in terms of where we're at. I attended a meeting with the Finance Committee last week to participate in their goal-setting discussion, and I just wanted to make sure that our goals were aligned with theirs. So it was a very productive discussion, and I appreciate them hosting me. In terms of project updates, we have a lot going on. I just wanted to thank the Winchendon Housing Authority for lending the use of their lifts so that BCA architects could examine the town hall structure top to bottom. And Brian Croto obviously is licensed to operate that, so thank you to him for flying the architect around the building. I toured Town Hall with Jim, I believe it's Heishi, from Monty Tech to identify potential projects that would fit within their curriculum. So obviously we're looking at a lot of repairs that need to be done in this building, and it would be a good opportunity for us to lean on that partnership and work with Monty Tech. And thank you to Mo Ward for making the introduction for me. So we'll continue to have that conversation. Work has started to replace the railings here at Town Hall along Front Street, and they've taken core samples of the existing millwork, taken it off site, and they're going to be replicating it to make sure it goes back the right way and it's historically accurate. I attended a site visit for Winchendon Community Park in late July. This included members from various boards, but predominantly the zoning board. Rick was also there, kudos, to address any questions as that project moves forward through the permitting process. So that was a good example of a project that unfortunately, and I think COVID didn't help, was designed a little bit in a vacuum, and I think there was a bit of shock when it hit the boards and committees, so I'm just trying to help hold its hand as it makes its way through. Phase 2 site testing is underway for 311 Beach Street, including a recent round of ground penetrating radar to detect possible underground fuel tanks. So we'll have some pricing for that in time for hopefully if we have a special town meeting in early November. I was joined by our DPW department in planning and development to examine the corner across the street from that property. It's the corner of Lake and Spring. And we're working to identify funds to place a very kind of small and modest green space there to improve the appearance of our downtown gateway. We are flipping Front Street to a one-way down the hill towards Lake Street as a preliminary effort to examine the traffic pattern heading into Blair Square. That'll be temporary, and we'll announce well in advance before we do it. But as part of that, we'll be diverting traffic down Lake Street, and so we're going to be paving that. Actually, it was paved today using Chapter 90 funds. It's a short stretch, and it was in really rough shape anyway. But especially we're going to be diverting traffic. We wanted to make sure it was in good shape. Our team continues to meet weekly with representatives from BOSFCSC just to keep them on task. They began the asbestos remediation on the roof today, and the inside has been fully remediated. So we'll be going through a purchase and sale process, hopefully coming up in mid to late September, and we'll bring that final document before the board. And the owners of BOSFCSC are going to come in too, just to provide an update and give you all an idea of kind of where they are at in terms of timelines before we officially hand the property over. I met with architects from Ty and Bond at the old Murdoch Senior Center last week to discuss the needed repairs. I just wanted to better wrap my head around where we were at in terms of design and planning stage, and we're actually at the first step. So we'll be building that one from scratch. We do have funding for phase 1, which is good from town meeting, but we actually need to secure an owner's project manager. Given the value of the project, it exceeds $1.5 million. So state procurement laws, we're required to have an OPM. So I'll be putting it out an RFP and developing one for an OPM. Once we have an OPM in place, then we have to put an RFP out to get a designer who we're going to be trying to secure over the winter to design the repairs for phase 1, and then kicking off and going out to bid. I would anticipate work to start and actually see some staging on the building by early summer next year. In the meantime, it is very much secure, but we need to address that sooner rather than later. Pre-construction meeting was held for the Railroad Street project. As you know, that was grant funded, and it's going to kick off shortly after Labor Day to maximize parking down there, add some more street trees, better sidewalks. And the real benefit of that is once Railroad Street is complete, Central Street will be complete a year later, and that's right at the intersection of where the RHI building is. So it really incentivizes the owner of that property to make some improvements. So it takes some time, but we're getting there. We released an RFP for design services to replace the water main from Ashburnham along the Sherbert Road, as I mentioned. And that's just one piece to help address long-term water infrastructure needs. In the miscellaneous category, I met with the president of Franklin Pierce University to talk about opportunities for a partnership that would benefit both the town of Winchendon and the university. So we're going to be working together to create avenues for Franklin Pierce students to volunteer in our community. And we're going to work on opportunities for Winchendon Public School students to pursue a degree should they desire after high school. And it's also an opportunity to coordinate interactions between our athletic programs and those at the university. So I've been working closely with Interim Superintendent King to try to foster that relationship. They're right in our backyard, and it's a good resource. And for obvious reasons, I have a soft spot for the university, but anything to benefit the town, and I think that there's some good that can be had there. I met with the owner of the IGA and our town planner on site to discuss barriers to that site right next to the Family Dollar. And we're going to be working closely with them to try to secure a tenant. It's a pretty high profile storefront in the heart of our downtown. So I actually had another call with them, the owner, on my drive in this morning, and they're going to be papering the windows temporarily just to try to make it a little less vacant looking. In the meantime, while we try to line someone up to actually get somebody in at the property. I attended a virtual seminar to discuss the Montechusett Economic Development District and Montechusett Region Comprehensive Economic Development Strategies. This was in part to advocate for a regional effort to utilize ARPA funding. So I know it had come up. You hear a lot about drainage, water and sewer, and then broadband had come up in one of our previous conversations. On the local level, it's nearly impossible to get a broadband project up off the ground. You really need a regionalized effort. And so that's why we're leaning on Montechusett to see if we can bundle together with surrounding communities to actually get something off the ground that has some impact. So we're chipping away at that. And then I've been, as I mentioned, regularly communicating with our Board of Health to keep an eye on COVID-19. And that's something I'll continue to keep the board up to date on. Lastly, and I've extended the invite before, but once again, to any of the selectmen, if you want to walk downtown with me and talk about things, I will clear my schedule for you. So find me if you have the time, and I can tell you about some of the things we're actively working on downtown. And lastly, I just want to once again thank our staff. They are excellent in every single way, and they're working really hard to make Winchendon an excellent place to live, work, and play. So thank you. We appreciate you, and you're doing a really good job. So thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for the town manager? Questions, comments on his report?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward?
Yeah, I just want to thank the town manager and the veterans agent and the town accountant and assistant town accountant for getting the veteran payments. Sort of was a fiasco there for a while, but it got straightened out in the end. The only thing I would ask now is, because these folks look forward to these payments on a regular basis, because for the last couple months it was all over the map on when they would get them, do we have a set time during the month when they will be getting their checks? At least the first week or the second week, or do we?
Yes, we do, and that's a great question, and that was one of my concerns as well, is that a lot of these people rely on this money to roll in consistently because they have their own bills and needs that they need to pay. So there's going to be one more kind of odd offset makeup payment coming in earlier this month, and then going forward in September it will be consistent. I believe it was the second week, but I can confirm.
Okay.
And it'll be consistent going forward every month thereafter. And a big part of that was there was a huge backlog and issues that we had that went back several years, unfortunately, even prior to the loss of Scott. But cleaning that up with the state was kind of a priority. And I apologize to some veterans in person. I don't want to say that the cleanup was done at their expense, but in many ways it was. We had to kind of hit the brakes and make sure from a financial standpoint we were being responsible there. And it was regrettable that it impacted them, but it'll be smooth going forward.
Thanks.
Thank you. We have two sets of minutes this evening. First one is Monday, July 19th, 2021, of our regular meeting. Take a look at it, please, and I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward,
I move the board approve the regular Board of Selectmen meetings for Monday, July 19, 2021, as presented.
Second.
motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 And I will abstain, as I was absent that evening. So it's 5-4-0-1. We have executive session minutes of Monday, June 28th, 2021.
Madam Chair,
Mr.
I
Ward,
move the board approve the BOSS executive session meetings and release them for Monday, June 28, 2021.
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Our next meeting is August 30th, 2021.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Anderson.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned, 10:25.